is up, everyone, and welcome to the show. How'd you like that intro, guys? Pretty cool, huh?
That was freaking
That's
awesome.
great.
Well,
Fire me up. We got to get these guys' faces in there too.
I
I
know.
love being the face of the channel, Mike. I'm honored, but I don't know. People might get sick of it.
You're the face of the franchise, my friend. Face of the
guess so.
franchise.
Wow.
Welcome, everyone. We have a good show in store for you tonight. We got a very passionate panel. We got Shawn from the Red, White, and Bills. We got Brett from the Go Bills podcast. And, of course, Jake Podger from Nickel City Mafia. And I'm Mike Thornton. We want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch our show. We appreciate you so much, and we hope you interact throughout these segments. These are going to be fun. So please, we want to hear from you. We're a week and a half now, guys. We're a week and a half now past that heartbreaker, that debacle in Buffalo against Cincinnati. And, it's taken us this long. We had to digest some film, rewatch some things to make sure when we come here and talk that we get get everything right. And, but I'll tell you what, it's good to be back, especially with you four and everyone that's going to join us in the channel. I already see some folks joining us. So I'm excited to be back, guys. So thank you for joining us tonight, Brett and Shawn, as always, and everyone out in the channel. The way the show is going to work tonight, this is going to be fun. This is going to be, I'm sure we're going to have some disagreements. But the way we're going to start, the first segment is going to be, we're going to go around to each panel member and ask them what went wrong for the Buffalo Bills. And we hope that you also chime in. And what went wrong for the Buffalo Bills doesn't necessarily mean it has to be what went wrong in that Bengal game. It could be the accumulation of everything that led up to that game and then everything that was exposed in that game. So that's kind of how it's going to work. Once we go through that and we answer some of your questions, I'm sure you guys are going to chime in with some questions, some thoughts, which we definitely want. Then we're going to put our GM caps on. I hope everyone brought their GM cap, and including you guys in the channel. And then we're going to go around the panel members and talk about where we go from here. You as the GM, Jake will be put on the spot. It's like, you, Jake, you're the GM right now. You're Bean. Maybe he even wants to go higher. He says, I'm the owner and I'm firing everybody. But I don't think so. I think Jake will say, I'll be Bean, and I'm just going to talk about the positional moves I'm going to make in free agency, what I'm going to look for in the draft. Knowing Jake and Shawn and these guys, they're big, they watch a lot of college games. They'll probably drop a few names for you. But really, it's about the positions tonight. And then we'll get into those player names in future shows. But anyhow, let's get rolling. First of all, Shawn, nobody cooler than Mr. Shawn Kula. How you doing, my friend? It's been a week and a half. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm, moved on now. Nothing you can do about it. But since this is streaming on my channel as well, I wanted to take the time to thank everybody who watches the Red, White, and Bills and supports me. I think I gained about a little bit over 60 subs in this past season. It was a fun season. It was a roller coaster of a season. But a good season nonetheless for the most part. But appreciate everybody that supports and watches the channel. Especially for Nickel City Mafia and Go Bills podcast as well. But I just wanted to thank as far as Red, White, and Bills goes, because I haven't put out a video since the Dolphins post game. So I just wanted to put that out there before we started. But I'm doing all right. I mean, after watching that terrible game, I was just like, well. This is at least when we lost last year, we played a great game, and it was the best game in playoff history. But now it's just like you looked like you don't belong on the field. You got dominated in the first quarter, and that's when the game was over. So it's like it was kind of more just an annoyance that we had to deal with for a few days, and listen to all the chirping, which was well deserved. And we were the Super Bowl favorites before the season started, and we didn't live up to the hype, and it made a lot of people angry that we were the favorites and that Josh was a favorite for MVP. But there was nothing wrong with picking either of those because we had a team for it, and Josh is a top 3 quarterback. So, I mean, the people that hated on the Bills and Josh got what they wanted, but I mean, definitely let down season. As we all said beforehand, you got to get to the Super Bowl at the minimum for it to be a pretty good year for us, but we get worse and worse since 2020. AFC Championship, divisional round, and then get blown out in the divisional round. So, like Mike said in the beginning, we're going to put our GM caps on later and talk about what went wrong, but it's not just this season what went wrong. It's a lot of things. But I appreciate you guys having me on again, so it's going to be fun.
Of course, anytime. I forgot to put the disclaimer out there for this show. This is a no holds barred show. If you're familiar with wrestling, you know what I'm talking about. Feel free to speak your mind, and I'm sure we'll have some differences of opinions on the panel, and I'm sure we'll have that with the folks on the channel as well. Brett, good to see you, man. You're the young gun, Mr. Brett McDurphy from the Go Bills podcast. We call him the young gun. He's a rising star. How you doing, Brett?
Doing good, guys. I'm glad to be with you guys again for another week. I know it's been a while since we saw each other last, but I feel much better. I think there's a lot of optimism for the Bills. I know we talk about it each week and or each season after the year ends, and I do feel like there's ways that the Bills can improve the roster. I think that this is a team, as I shared with you guys, there's somebody on Twitter that predicted the next 10 Super Bowl winners, and the Bills are the ones that they chose for next season. So if he sticks with that, I mean, he's got the Eagles this year. If they stick with that, then Buffalo's going to win the Super Bowl next year. I'll be happy with that. And we got another we'll have our first ring. We'll have a deep season, and we can finally get this monkey off our backs of not winning a Super Bowl and eliminate all the doubters next season.
Love it. Love it. I have to come up with a good nickname for Jake, so maybe you can help me out, guys. Jake the Snake Podger. I don't know. When I introduce him, I feel like there should be a little bit more in that introduction. But Jake, Mr. Podger, how you doing, man?
Mike, I'm doing great. Just happy to be back with the boys here. It feels like an eternity since we've done a show. I don't think my mind was even in the right place when we did the post-game show for the Bengals game. So it's hard to even remember what happened. I went back and listened to that show, and I don't even remember. Like, I was in a totally different zone at that time. So it's nice to kind of have collected thoughts now and to just go into a new year. This is the off season now, which is unfortunate. And, we were hoping that we'd be playing in a week or a week and a half here, but unfortunately we are not. But hey, man, this is where we can kind of vent. And, I actually had a little bet going on in my head on whether Shawn would come on the show or whether we hear from Damar Hamlin first. So we heard from Damar before we heard from Shawn live. So I won my bet on that because Shawn said, once he was done, once this game ended against the Bengals, he said, I'm not going live till next season. So I'm glad we got him on earlier. Fired up to have you guys. It's going to be a great show. I think we'll get a lot of good talking points out. Kind of do a little more therapy because I feel like we still need it, and I think people out there still need it too. So this will be really good for all of us.
Yeah, I love it. Brett's already posted his first
I
show
saw it.
on his channel
and
his halftime show. He's already got that out there scheduled. Love that, Brett. Speaking of Damar Hamlin, how about all those dumb social media things saying rest in peace, Damar? That wasn't Damar at the Bills game. Come on, man.
Insane.
Seriously.
Listen, I love a good conspiracy theory. I am like all about the conspiracies. But, you got to trust in Josh, first off, because he squashed that on the Kyle Brandt's Basement show. And then, of course, there's people trying to pick and prod from that, saying he's 99% sure that it was Damar at the game. So there's still a 1% chance it wasn't him. But, yeah, man, that was awesome to see him. Obviously, you could tell, too, because then, of course, now you have people saying, hey, that the videos were filmed before it happened. He's really dead still, which is insane. People are still going farther and farther with this thing, but you could tell he had lost a little bit of weight, but it's so good to hear his voice. You could tell how, genuine he was and how much he appreciated it. I feel like Damar is a very soft-spoken guy too. He's not like a rah-rah guy or anything like that. Obviously on the field, he's a different animal. He gets pretty fired up out there, but I think for him, just to process everything mentally, emotionally, all that stuff, I think it's really, just, you can see that that's how he sort of expresses himself. And, just awesome, man. Just really happy to be able to celebrate his life and for him to be alive. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into things. I was going to say, I'm going to give you, Shawn, I'm going to give you an option. Do you want to start us off with what went wrong, or do you want to be the first one to go as the GM when we talk about where do we go from here?
Well, it's up to you. Before anything, I just wanted to say, like, for people that believe, like, oh, he was cloned, do you think a person's family would be 100% if that was a thing that happens? Do you think his family would be like, oh yeah, sure, let's go hang out with a fake person of my son.
Yeah,
That'd be wonderful. That's the first thing I want to do.
Yeah.
And he was a second-year player, 6th round or 5th or 6th round pick. Do you think they're gonna make a factory of cloning second-year players? He's not Michael Jackson or one of the people that you thought faked their death or whatever. It's just not how people don't even do that. And it's just crazy that people actually even thought that. Maybe they're just being funny, but I mean, if people actually believe that, it's a little bit crazy. But
I didn't find it funny, but there were people that believed it. I mean, the way they were putting these posts out there, I was like, if you didn't know any better, you might be like, oh my God, if you weren't a Bills fan.
Demanding that he speak to the media and that he posted video. It's like, geez, man, this guy just got resuscitated on the field and died twice, essentially. And people are calling this guy out.
Why didn't the reporters tell us what he said in the locker room? Because maybe he wanted to keep it private.
Yeah,
maybe the reporters weren't in the locker room. Maybe they saw him walk into the locker room and didn't hear what he said.
I think sometimes you forget this day and age too, like with how fast people get information and how everything is recorded. Sometimes there are still moments where it's like, it's secluded, it's more private, it's more intimate.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you should appreciate. Like those are moments that are special. Like take the time to have more of those moments. So I think the whole situation taught us a lot, and obviously super pumped to have him, just back in the building. I think the Bills, obviously it was an emotional, roller coaster with them, and obviously, it probably affected their play a little bit. But hey, man, we'll see what happens in the future with him. But I know he partnered up with the American Nation too. I saw that come out, so definitely, at least whether he plays football or not, he'll have an impact in some way, one way or another.
Yeah, I felt that was really big for him to partner with the American Heart Association and get involved with that, and then start a new movement for the. He wants to challenge 3 different people. I think he picked like LeBron, Tom Brady, and Michelle Obama to start the challenge of the 3 steps towards checking your heart and making sure that everything was okay with you. And I felt like that's the right thing to do at that situation because, I feel like heart diseases, most of the time, nobody really checks on that. And then there could be different issues that can be prevented from heart diseases. So I'm really glad that he's starting a new movement, and hopefully it helps somebody in the future.
Yeah, I love that, Brett. That is awesome. Definitely.
I think the best comment I heard about it, I love Cole Beasley to death, but everyone was saying if DeMar was, and this is the last I'll say of it, but if DeMar really was dead, you would hear it from Cole Beasley first out of anyone. I mean, he would have said, hey, like, guys, this is, he would have called it out. If anyone would have said it, it would have been Cole. So
for sure.
For him to be silent, and I love it, like after the fact, all the players coming out and kind of trolling it and stuff, and Dawson Knox saying, man, I wish he was a clone and all this other stuff. So kind of funny. But yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into it. I see some folks out there in the channel. No one said hi to us. Yes, let us know who's out there. Let us know where you're from. And Jake, I'm going to start it with you. I thought about this. I want Shawn to kick us off as the GM. But I want to start with you as far as what went wrong. What went wrong for the Buffalo Bills?
I'll start with the Bengals game, and then I'll kind of go full circle and talk about the season. So first off with the Bengals game, the fact that the Bengals offensive line absolutely showed up. I think one of the biggest pieces missing in that game was Daquan Jones. Getting that news like an hour before kickoff that he wasn't playing was enormous. Me and Brett were just talking about it, prior to the show here. Eddie Oliver getting double teamed all day, making these late round picks that this Bengals team has, look like all pros out there. The lack of pressure on Joe Burrow, him getting the ball out quickly in general. There was a lot there, the receivers making plays. There was just, I think a very passive defense playing bend, don't break defense, but we got broke every single time. So it just wasn't working, the failure to make adjustments. And listen, I understand, continuing to stick in that base nickel defense, but then there's thinking logically, like playing 8 yards off the ball on 3rd and 4 with all of your corners. I mean, I just don't understand some of that. Like there was a lot of things that happened in that game. and I'm not sure who made that call, whether it was Leslie Frazier or Sean McDermott, but there was a lot of things, as a fan, just looking from the couch. And listen, I'm not a coach, but just seeing it from our point of view, going back and watching the film twice over now, a lot of head scratching moments. So I think we just didn't make the right adjustments and make the right calls when we needed them. On top of that, I think there was some timidness with the offense. We could never get into an actual rhythm. And I think at times Josh, I don't know if he loses trust in players, but he tries to make too many things happen. And, errant throws happen, but also he makes these incredible plays too. And there were just a lot more negatives than positives this game. And it just, nothing seemed to click. There were just so many things that were the lead to our demise in that game. We scored 10 points. We allowed 27. There were just so many things, and we were always playing from behind. We never even once had a lead in that game. So just very, very frustrated. I know the Bills players are all frustrated by it too. The coaches feel like they could do better. We were outcoached. We were outplayed, on all phases. And it sucks and it stings. And that this team is capable of so much more. And you question, did we make the right move by having Ken Dorsey as our offensive coordinator? Did we make the right move by retaining a lot of our coaching staff? There's so many questions that you have. And there's, in my opinion, there's no reason that this team shouldn't have won a Super Bowl this year. But hey, it is what it is. And we got to face what the reality is. And the reality is that we're not playing in a week and a half now. So, I think that's really what it came down to in that Bengals game. Throughout the season, we battled through so much adversity. We battled through all the injuries. We still managed to win 13 games somehow, which is incredible if you really think about it. And it was an emotional roller coaster for the team in general. There were a lot of games that we won that were close, and I think that was a step in the right direction because that was part of the narrative going into the season is that we were 2-9 in one-score games or something like that. So we kind of squashed that narrative, which was great. We saw some comebacks happen, against the Ravens in particular. I thought that was extremely impressive. And I do think the first, 5 to 6 games of the season, we looked like a legitimate contender. And as Josh sort of mentioned, it just seems like they peaked a little too early. When you peak heading in, as you're going into the playoffs, continuing that throughout the playoffs, I think that's usually at, the best time to do so. Even against the Dolphins, we just didn't look right. There was something always there where you felt nervous going into these games, whereas I think at the beginning of the year, you felt like you were just going to run over every team. And we played some really good teams at the beginning of the year too. So I think the team just got worn down, man, plain and simple. And you can't have it happen. I think, peaking too early, getting worn down, and just, the lack of consistent play really killed us. And that's why we're in the position we're in right now. And that's pretty much what I have to say on it.
All right. I did want to say hi to Brian Label out there. He did say Bills came into the season with a better team, and they are leaving with. I don't think people want to admit it, but the cap, Trey not the same. Von older, seems like we have regressed. And then we got him also saying we were the team to beat coming into the season. Now we've been surpassed by Cincy and KC.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if this is Mama Padre.
That's my mom. Yeah, it's got to be my mom.
Padre.
My dad's at the bar right now. Like I said, he's waiting in between games, unless he's logged into my mom's account. I don't know. But the grammar seems a little bit better there. So,
all right.
No offense to my dad, but my mom's got the brains.
All right, Shawn, I thought maybe we'd go around and maybe have you, I'll go to you. What do you think went wrong for the Buffalo Bills? You can reply to what Jake said, but I think we just go around and we all say that. I think we're going to say some similar things, some different. I do have a follow-up for Jake afterwards, but let me throw it to you, Shawn. What do you think? What went wrong for the Buffalo Bills?
Well, as far as the Cincinnati game goes, I mean, if you really think about it, we're an easy team to stop. We have one elite receiver and a couple rookies that don't get a shot, and the rest of them are inconsistent players. We have a bottom 5 offensive line. And when you drop 7 or 8 back and you rush 3 or 4 and you get home, 8 D-backs are going to stop 4 receivers every time. We get no separation. Diggs can get separation, but he's bracketed. Nobody else can get separation. So what do you think Josh is supposed to do? He can't make people get open. you can't throw people open when they're getting double teamed and bracketed, and that's what they did. They rush 3 people, they get sacks. They rush 4 people, they get pressure constantly, and that's the issue. Josh can play well under pressure, but when you're getting home with 3 and 4, when you have more linemen than they're bringing pressure and you can't stop them, you can't beat a team that way. We can't run the ball because we have a terrible offensive line, and this is all stuff I've been saying for 3 years now. It's like we continuously ignore the offensive line. And you look at those backups from Cincinnati. The left tackle was a second-round pick from Clemson. And I told you guys off air, we never draft anybody from top schools. We try to outsmart people and draft from these smaller schools. That, oh, this guy's like, he's quick, he's got great hands, he's going to be great in the NFL. You have to draft people from these big power schools, SEC and stuff like that, because they always perform well, because they're the most close enough ready to the NFL. So that left tackle from Clemson did phenomenal because he's used to playing NFL talent at Clemson. So when you come and play a team like us, our game changer was Von Miller. We have good players on our defensive line, but nobody that can take over a game. So that's where we don't get pressure because we have a bunch of good guys. And as you guys mentioned earlier, and I mentioned before, Ed Oliver is undersized as a defensive tackle. He can break through double teams sometimes, but when he's double teamed every time because he's the best player on the D line, when Von Miller's not playing, what are you going to do? Nobody else can get home one-on-one, and Ed Oliver wins one-on-one matchups all the time. So when Von Miller was out there, we're top 15 in every pass rush category. When he's not out there, we're bottom 10. So that's one of the main issues is we can't win on either side of the ball. And even with Von Miller, we went on the defensive side, but our offensive line is just trash every single year. And, they try to draft people like Spencer Brown. People, everybody wanted Ryan Bates to be signed after 4 games and, that he played last year. They thought he was good. That didn't work out too well. Mitch Morse is surrounded by 2 bums. So he's an average, he's a slightly above average center. And then you're playing against 2 people that are trash. He's not going to be that great either. Dawkins took a step back this year, whether people want to admit that or not. He wasn't that good. So there's a misconception that the Bills are a stacked team. We're really not. You have Josh Allen and Diggs. That's the only people you can really say they are a proven, a well-talented player. Knox could be good, but he wasn't utilized properly in this offense. Diggs wasn't even utilized properly in this offense. You see people like Travis Kelce. He's not that fast. He's fast, but he's not the fastest. He gets 25 targets against the Jags. You don't think they're double teaming Travis Kelce? But they know how to get him open and know how to get him the ball so they can win the game. We can't do that ever with anybody. So that's been our problem for the whole year. And going back to after week 6, when I told you guys, I don't like that close win. I don't like we played like crap. We still won. I don't like that. Yeah, but we won. We got to be happy about the win. We said that for like the last 9 weeks. And then we played terrible football. And then we won the close games. Yeah, we won them. But we didn't win the close game by the other team was playing phenomenal and we were playing phenomenal and it was a battle. We let them hang around and we won a close game. That's the difference. Like we didn't actually play well enough to win a close game, but we let bad teams hang around with us and it made it seem like, oh yeah, they can win close games now. No, we shouldn't have been close anyway. Like the Browns, the Lions were on a win streak, but it doesn't matter. The Browns, the Lions, all those teams that down the stretch where the Jets, the Dolphins, they shouldn't have hung around with us, and we let them. So, I always say that every time there's a close game, we got to clean that up. I don't like this. And, as fans, we're like, we got the win though. It's all that matters, which is true to a point. But then it ends up happening like this. You play in the playoffs against good teams with good coaches. You settle for, oh yeah, good victory. McDermott tells the guys, great victory. Let's correct this stuff, but it never gets corrected. So, we'll get into it more, I'm sure, but there's top to bottom problems in this team and organization, and I'm not even excited for next year because I just don't see anything great coming out of it.
So, Shawn, I want to first of all, I love your take on draft players from bigger colleges. We were talking about that pre-show, so love that take. I did want to ask you about McDermott and how much of a heavy hand does he have on that defense? Do you think it's him, or is it Frazier, or is it a combination of them working together, or do you think he lets Frazier do his thing?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's McDermott's scheme, but we've seen in the years past he takes the plays away from Frazier and he calls it himself. I think and another thing I said before, we're never going to win because of McDermott's ego and his stubbornness. And you run the nickel defense for 5 years straight. You don't think teams know that every concept you run in that defense, you don't do anything different. You have all pros on your defense, and it doesn't matter. Like people should we sign Edmonds? Should we sign Poyer? No, let him go. Save the money and build up on your offense, because even when you have a top 5 defense, you can't stop anybody and you can't win. So like Andre Reed posted, "Oh, sign Edmonds." I said no, because we can't win with them. The defense is a top 5 defense, top 2 defense, and they choke in the playoffs. He's the reason we lost in the 13-second game partially. Like they don't need to be signing $35 million a year linebackers when you can sign a guard for 15. Like it doesn't make sense. You can't beat Kansas City with defense. You can't beat the Bengals with defense because they're going to score on you no matter what. And, it's just these coaches. I mean, I love Frazier and McDermott, but it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. You run the same kind of defense, and then you don't expect people to key in on it. Zone is the easiest thing to beat in any form of football. You give people openings. You bend and don't break. Good teams are going to break you all the time, and we get broken every time when it matters most. Yeah, you're gonna win 12 games, 11 games, but whether it's McDermott or Frazier, it's still their same scheme, and they live by it. They don't change out of it. They've been doing it since 2017. Like, oh, it's going to work. We have the personnel. Let's just keep doing it. They're going to make a mistake. The other team's going to make a mistake. Okay. Hasn't done anything for us ever. So in every playoff game, the defense folded. So I think it's a little bit of both, a combination, but their stubbornness, they don't want to change nothing. That video you sent us, Jacob, the cover one said that they overcomplicate things. It's not overcomplicated because they've been running the same thing for 5 years. Most of these people on the defense have been there for 3 years. They know every concept, and there's not much. You can't oversimplify a simple game, in my opinion. But, I mean,
defense is actually the simplest. If you're talking between offense and defense should be the simplest.
Exactly.
It's the simplest position. I mean, any defensive – corner is tough, obviously, but, like, defense, man, just go hit the guy. Hit the guy with the ball. Plain and simple, shoot.
Exactly. And again, I love Frazier and McDermott, but I mean the defense we had, you can't just keep running the same. It's insanity, expecting a different result. You run the same defense. We were up 16-0 against the Texans. The defense choked. We got blown out by Kansas City after we were up 9-0. But the 13-second game, you gave up 30 points in 2 minutes, and then they didn't even show up to this game. Milano goes up there as an all-pro and says, yeah, nobody had energy. Well, whose fault is that? It's your fault, too, because you're supposed to be Mr. Big Bad All-Pro, get everybody motivated. You're hosting a playoff game. You're hosting a playoff game against a team that thought you shouldn't even be on the same field as them, that you were selling tickets to the AFC Championship game when every team was selling tickets to the game because you have to do that. You let that bulletin board material and people like the Bengals run their mouth and then go into your home and walk all over you. You should have energy. So the coach, whether it's McDermott or Frazier, I think it's McDermott's scheme, so you can't fire Frazier because it's going to be the same thing, only with a different coach. You have to do something different. You drafted Kyer Elam to be a man coverage corner. That's what he was in college, and you want to put him in a soft zone. Like he's gonna get destroyed.
Yeah.
The Trey not being the same from that comment, it doesn't matter because you're playing in the soft zone anyway. So he's going to get beat regardless. He's not playing man coverage, so he can't even be his best of his ability. You're playing off the ball all the time. People are going to get catches on him. He's going to get burnt by Tyreek Hill once in a while. So, I mean, you got to be able to adjust, and we can't. Coaches can't do it.
There's something to be said about losing playing aggressively compared to losing playing bend, don't break. I absolutely agree with what you're saying there, Shawn, because I would be okay if we came out and played extremely aggressive. We threw in a lot of, schematic blitzes and, we played press man a lot and, we switched it up a little bit, made some adjustments. And it's like, hey, the better team just won, plain and simple. And if we lost that way, I think I'd feel a lot better about it. But the fact that, I don't know if it's stubbornness, I don't know what it is, but the fact that there was no change at all and we just continue to let this team beat us down. That's frustrating. And I can't even imagine how those players feel.
Brett, I have a question.
I just want to say one more thing, Mike, before
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
I feel bad for talking too much, but they blitzed Joe Burrow for 3 quarters straight when Joe Burrow's rated the best quarterback under a blitz. And
he's also getting the ball out in 2 milliseconds. Like it was crazy.
They were worried about the pass rush not making it there, but it wasn't going to make it there anyway because he was throwing the ball in 1 second, 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then those first 2 touchdowns, the guy Teron Johnson blitzed in. Mm-hmm. Edmonds, that everybody wants to pay, and Poyer, who everybody wants to pay, looked at each other like idiots and then went back to their zone and then let Jamar Chase stand there like this for 5 seconds. And then Joe Burrow does like a layup basketball shot to throw it to Jamar Chase. And then they're just like – and then the second one, Milano, he didn't know if he wanted to blitz or go in coverage. Hayden Hurst runs right by him. Jordan Poyer bites on the run. And then there goes Hayden Hurst, 14-0. Like,
wide open.
That's all because they were trying to run these stupid blitz packages in their stupid zone coverage. And you got beat every time. And that's why we lost 14-0. They had no chance of coming back at that point. But I'm sorry, I talked too much. So you guys go.
No, I think it's something to be said. If you're going to be aggressive, be all the way aggressive. Don't just, go all in, man.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
I was going to ask Brett. Brett, did you see that video that Jake shared with us? Did you watch that cover one?
No, I didn't.
All right. So I'll come back to you with the next question I have, but I'll go to Jake on this one. So Jake, I always say that you and Shawn and Brett are better X and O guys than I am. But if I understood that video, what it was saying is that when we go during the regular season, we have like 4 different, they were calling it checks. I would imagine that's just 4 different types of adjustments we'll make based on what we're seeing what we're seeing lined up, right? What we're going against. And then when they get to the playoffs, they complicate it a bit and they move from 4 to 15 is what I heard them say. Right. So even though the coverage looks the same, they're trying to make on the fly adjustments more. And
and that's why I think you did see some guys out of position.
Wide open, open plays. And I don't know if was a
there
smart
was confusion.
thing.
There absolutely was. There was miscommunications. There was a lot of that. So that's a very good point, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of these. You had some young, inexperienced guys out there trying to complicate matters. You saw it, right? I mean, during the regular season, how many wide open receivers, wide open tight ends did you see? I didn't see many plays, but in that game,
you're right.
I mean, Hurst was wide open. Chase on his first touchdown, Hurst on that second touchdown, wide open, like missed blown coverages. So I was just trying to make sure I understood that, and it sounds like I did. So again,
100%.
They are making slight adjustments in that, but again,
I think they're just the wrong adjustments, if that makes sense. Yeah, and they're not. It's not like a total switch of your game plan. It's still. It is. It's in a sense overcomplicating things, and then I think also you're still setting your team up for failure. It's just not. Yeah. It's not playing to their strengths. Again, like Kyer Elam, we saw what he did against Tyreek Hill playing press man. It was pretty damn impressive. Like, do more of that. We had a top receiver in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you could have done that against those guys. Just jam them at the line. Do something. Instead of playing 10 yards off the ball. I mean, it just wasn't working.
Timmy, see you out there. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah,
Timmy says
Let's
Rick
go,
Ryan's defenses had Tom Brady's number for 2 seasons. If you see the following season, his defenses got figured out. Never the same after that. You can't keep coming back doing the same thing.
Yep. No, he's absolutely right.
And definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Same coaching style, same coordinators.
Shawn is probably loving this.
I know he's loving it. He's loving it.
He is right, though. He is. Yeah.
Timmy.
So I was going to ask you, Brett, one of the follow-up questions. Why is this team a top 5, top 10, defense over the last few years during the regular season? And again, we might have answered it on the last question, but what are your thoughts? And then go into what went wrong for the Buffalo Bills. So my question to you is, why is this defense struggling in the playoffs versus the regular season? I mean, guys, we held teams to a little under 18 points on average a game in the regular season. That's incredible. So what fails and what happens in the postseason? So, Brett, take over and then go into your what went wrong for the Bills.
I think we really answered this already. And Mike, to go back to what you guys were talking about, that cover one video, I did see that actually. I saw it on actually somebody else's channel that they shared it. So I was a little confused on what you were bringing up. But I did see that. And I do think that it's mostly, when it comes down to training camp, we have like 5 different coverages that we're going to run. And we run those 5 coverages very well. And I think we just complicate things when it comes to the playoffs. And, Sean McDermott's looking to tweak everything and make everything right at the right time. And we just overcomplicate things. And we try and fix everything, and it doesn't work. That's not how the NFL is played. You got to, look at what the offense of the other team is going to give you, and then you make adjustments on the fly. And I think that Sean McDermott's just trying to complicate it way too much. He's trying to find answers before they're even there. And it's just not the way that you're supposed to play the game. And I think another thing is, and this might be something that other people will disagree with, is I think that some of the injuries impacted the Buffalo Bills throughout the season as well as last year. If you go back to that 13 seconds game, I don't think that the Bills would have lost that game if Trey White was out there. And I don't think that the Bills would have necessarily lost this game with the Cincinnati Bengals if Von Miller was out there. And I think that if we had a healthy Tre'Davious White, we had a healthy Von Miller this year, I think the outcome of this game would have been completely different from what we saw earlier 2 weeks ago. But I think that's mostly what it was. But going back to the Cincinnati Bengals game, I think that this team was just completely flat. They didn't have an answer whatsoever for whatever the Cincinnati offense was running. They were looking for a spark, and there wasn't a player that offered that spark. And like we said, there's all pros all around this team. You got Ed Oliver, you have Jordan Boyer, you have Tre'Davious White. There's a bunch of names that you could talk about, even Tremaine Edmonds. And I just felt like there wasn't a guy that stepped up. And if you look back to the Miami game, you saw players like Tremaine Edmonds where he went after the running back and laid a big hit on the running back. And that big hit that's motivation for other players. When I look at that as a fan, I'm thinking, hell yeah, like I love that hit. That's a great hit, fires me up. There wasn't anything in this game that really juiced me up. I think the only thing that really juiced me up was when it was 14-0. Josh Allen runs it in for the touchdown, and he's jawing the Cincinnati defense. And I'm like, okay, now we got a game. And I thought that we were going to stay in it. We're going to find an answer on defense. I'm like, okay, we'll get it taken care of. But we just never found that answer on defense. And it just seemed like we stayed in the same scheme every single time. We didn't adjust. We didn't play that press man coverage like we should have. And there wasn't a solution whatsoever for the Bills. And I think that, Cincinnati came out with a great game plan on offense. They double teamed Ed Oliver, did a really good job. We didn't have Daquan Jones, which really hurt us. And Daquan Jones is an excellent run-stopping defensive tackle for the Buffalo Bills. And I think that his absence in this game really shows that Buffalo needs to draft a defensive tackle to become the backup. And we're missing that guy that's, someone like an Aaron Donald that can command the double team, but also get somebody so that you have the outside guys getting to the quarterback. I mean, we got guys like Greg Russo, you have Shaq Lawson and Boogie Basham, and nobody was able to get to the quarterback pretty much throughout that whole entire game. It's really sad, but I will take this game with a grain of salt, and I'll talk about the whole entire season as well. Going to that, I know that Jake and Shawn went into it. I got to say, there was a ton of guys overall after Von Miller got hurt. There's a group of guys that really stepped up. I'm proud of this team for what they've done. I know that you can take one game and say, we played a bad game, but I really do think that there's guys that stepped up Greg Russo had a great season. Boogie Basham had a decent season as well. Shaq Lawson stepped up throughout the run to the playoffs. But I just think that, like we said, as a group, the emotions and, everything that happened just got too much for the Bills. And I think it was just too much to overcome. And I think that there should be solutions on how to fix that. But I think that in a year where there's not so many things that happened off the field, such as, the incident at the Tops supermarket up there, you have your owner that was sick, and you don't really have an answer to that. Micah Hyde, you have Trey White that was
Dawson
injured.
Knox's brother. Yeah, I mean, there's
Dawson Knox's brother. Yeah,
countless.
There's countless things that happen, and I think it just overwhelmed the Bills. It was too much, and I mean, I don't know what goes through the NFL player's mind after 21 days or 20 days after seeing their brother being carted off the field. There's just so much that goes through your mind in those situations. Maybe players were a little timid to play this game. I don't know. I'm not an NFL player. I'm not Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs or any of these guys. But, I mean, you got to think about that too. You don't really know. And I do think that if it was a different season, and I'm not trying to make excuses for the Buffalo Bills whatsoever, it wasn't a good game whatsoever for the Bills. But, I mean, there's a lot of things that Buffalo can clean up. They can figure this out. And I think that next year, I'm really excited for what the Bills have. And I know, Shawn, you're all about Leslie Frazier being gone. I get that. I get where you're coming from. But you're not going to find another coach that can take a defense and make him the number 2 defense in the NFL. You're not going to get that number 1 guy, because I'll tell you where he is. He's in Houston right now running a football team. You're not going to find somebody like Leslie Frazier. And you're also not going to find somebody in Leslie Frazier who is a very good coach, and he swallows his pride when Sean McDermott pretty much tells him in a game that you're not good enough today, and I need to take over.
I'm calling plays.
I'm calling the plays. You're not going to find somebody that doesn't, have a little attitude, because I'll tell you right now, if Sean McDermott took the play calling abilities away from me, I'm walking out of that stadium and I'm saying, bleep you,
Yeah.
Because that's just how I would be, because I feel like I would be disrespected. He swallowed his pride. He did what he had to do for the better of the team. And look what he did after that moment. He took the defense, made it incredible. I know the 13 seconds game was bad, but I do think that Buffalo is going to figure it out. It's just a matter of getting healthy. It's a matter of, swallowing your pride as a team, coming up with good schemes in the playoffs, 5 different schemes, not 15 different schemes, and getting it figured out.
Brett, I have a follow-up question for you. So do you think this team this year, do you think they win the Super Bowl last year? Like, do they beat that Chiefs team? Does 13 seconds happen? Or do you think the same thing happens?
I think 100% we win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I really do. I do think it would be difficult overall, but I think this team with Von Miller taking him away from the Rams, I think 100% we would win the Super Bowl. I think that this team would be ready. I think we have motivation. I think that there's a lot of different factors that Buffalo has that they could win the Super Bowl. And I do think that there's ways that we'll talk about it when we put our GM caps on. I think that there's ways that Buffalo can win a Super Bowl next year. And I don't think that the better team won against when we played the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the better team won that day. I don't think the better team won overall, because I think Buffalo 9 times out of 10 would beat the Cincinnati Bengals in those situations. But I just think we weren't there that day. I've seen it before in tennis where, you play, it happens in tournaments where you're playing matches and you're in the 6th match and, you don't play as well as you did in the first match. And, you have a good run and everything, and then it just comes to an end. And I felt like that's what happened with the Buffalo Bills, is they just they couldn't finish it off. The moment got too big for them. And if I'm Buffalo, I'm taking this game and I'm looking at it and saying, where can we get better? And I think the biggest thing that we can get better at is, on defense, I think we need to play better and stay in our gaps better. We talked about it off stage where the missed tackles, and I know this is something that I'm probably going to steal from Mike, but the missed tackles in this season and all the stuff that, as a team that's in their 5th season with their head coach, these things shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be in the bottom tier of the NFL in missed tackles. We should be right near the top, being disciplined and being in our gaps. It's sad to see that we're in the bottom half, and I think that those are the corrections that Buffalo can make to get back into the playoffs and be a better team next season.
So no, go ahead, Shawn. I'll let you. Yeah, you go.
I was going to say to caveat off of that, I don't hate Leslie Frazier, but what you just said is the reason why he needs to go. 31st, I forgot where I sent it to you guys in the chat once. I just don't remember when. We were ranked 31 out of 32 teams in tackling. That's coaching. I didn't watch the film. I couldn't rewatch it because I'm just like, I'm not going to do it. I don't know if they had 15 checks out there. I don't know if cover one. I'm not going to speak on if they were just putting a number out there, if they actually counted and watched and broke down the film because I didn't watch it yet. But that's coaching too. If it hasn't worked in 4 years and you try to overcomplicate things in the playoffs, that's your own fault. If your players can't do it, it's your fault. And while you're coaching and watching the game, the Bengals are doing this, the Bengals are doing this, you know exactly what they're going to do. So you don't have to have 15 checks. So this is all coaching stuff, McDermott and Frazier. So there's a reason why I love, like I said, he's a great coach, but we don't need to have a top 2 defense to win the Super Bowl because we proved that we can't win it with a top 2 defense because we've done it the last 5 years. We had a top 10 defense since they got here, top 5, three of those years at least, and it's done nothing for us. So, I mean, that I would hate to see them go, but we'll talk about that part later. But that's just, I wanted to mention that is like, he's a great coach, but then you're mentioning all these things like one of the worst teams as far as tackling goes. We have like 4 people. Epinessa's missed tackle percentage was like 75 out of 100. So, I mean, we have a lot of problems, and that's all coachable. Arm tackling is coaching. You learn how not to arm tackle in 7th grade when they make you tackle someone while they're sitting they're holding the ball next to a little mat, and then they're hitting you with those little pylon things and the agility cones and stuff. And they're like, okay, make sure when you tackle them, you wrap them up, and then you hit them into the pad. All right, guys. You little 12-year-old kids, okay, wrap up, make sure your head's to the side like this and not pointing down, and you bring them down. And then you got grown men trying to tackle someone like, I'm an all-pro, I'm Matt Milano, and he does that too. He arm tackles too. So all pros, tackles, all pro or not, but that's all coaching in my opinion. But Jake was about to comment, so I interrupted him. But
I'll let Mike go first. Mike, you've been quiet. I'll let you take this here.
I'm just going to have a little rebuttal to what you said about the tackling, that is coaching. These are grown men, professional players. Like you said, playing through Pee-wee football, playing through high school, playing for college. My God, you better know how to tackle by now. So, and a lot of these players are players that have been in the league for a while, Shawn. So I get it with the younger guys, maybe coach them up a little bit. But I don't know. I really don't think. I think you got to put some of that on the players. Really do. I mean, my God, you should know how to tackle by this point in your life. Come on now. Right. This is why you were drafted. That's my only rebuttal to that. Jake, before I get into my little what went wrong, let me throw it to you. I know you had something to say.
Well, first, let's highlight on a couple things that Timmy said here. So this actually is pretty spot on. Then you look at what he says here. You look at the quarterbacks that we actually played against, guys. I mean, below average seasons for both Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers. The Browns, I mean, you had Jacoby Brissett, who, no disrespect to Jacoby Brissett, I love that guy. I think he's great. He's a gamer. But he's not, he's not Justin Herbert. He's not Pat Mahomes. Yeah. We did play pretty well against the Chiefs. I think that is probably the moment where we peaked this season. And after that, it just, for whatever reason, we just couldn't stay consistent, I feel like. You look at that Jets game, especially, I think we were extremely flat during that game. And then, of course, Josh has the UCL injury, which, regardless of what he says, you know for a fact it affected him a little bit. I don't think he was quite the same thrower throughout the year because of that. And I do think he was timid at times to make some throws, even though he could still make the throw physically, which is insane. But yeah, I mean, you look at these teams that we played, their starting quarterbacks. It was like, did we really play that great of a schedule after the first 6 games of the season? I mean, it looked on paper at least, and we went through before the season games that we should have won and games that we think we would win and lose. And, we had, like, I think both Mike and myself, we had us on a, 7 to 8 game winning streak at one point. And the only team we had us losing to at the back half of the season was the Bengals. So, and it probably would have happened that way anyways. But, it's interesting when you actually do look at who we played, and was the defense inflated a little bit just because of the quarterbacks that we faced. I kind of agree with what Timmy's saying here.
The Rams week 1, they were fully healthy. They had Stafford, Cooper Kupp, they had all their weapons.
Right.
So they weren't bad week 1. They had injuries after like week 4. So I don't think the Rams win was a bad one at all. That was their championship team minus Von Miller and OBJ. Yeah. So I think that was a good one. In the Titans game, they still had Derrick Henry, and he was our kryptonite the last 2 years, and he won the game for him last year. So even though they didn't have AJ Brown, they still could have ran the ball over us and won, and they didn't. So, but I get that at the same time. I mean, we blew them out to the point where it didn't matter for them to run the ball because they couldn't catch up. But their defense is usually very physical and good. So I took that as a good win because they were 7-3, and they finished
to blow them out 41-7. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't count those first 2 wins as bad wins at all. I think those are good quality wins, especially because a Vrabel coach team is always good. And then again, they had by that 7-3 record, their whole offensive line was injured. Tannehill broke his ankle, and you were playing with was it Romeo Dobbs or somebody Dobbs, Justin Dobbs or Josh Dobbs, and then Malik Willis, who can't throw the ball worth anything anyway. So, and they almost beat the Chiefs. It took the Chiefs overtime to beat them. So, I mean, that was a good win in my opinion. The Rams game especially was a good win because they were the champs. They had the Super Bowl quarterback. They had the best receiver in the NFL. They had all the weapons they had minus Von and OBJ, and we blew them out. So, I mean, it was a good win. But at the end of the year, you look at it, the Rams were 5-12. The Titans were 7-10. Green Bay was this. But, I mean, you could look the Green Bay and the Lions teams, like I mentioned earlier, we shouldn't have hung with them, but they were hot when we played them. So, I mean, you could count those as bad wins, but as I mentioned last year too, like people are like, oh, you guys shut out the Texans, so it doesn't matter. Nobody else shut out the Texans last year either, besides us. So it's the NFL. You got to give these players credit. They're all the best players in the world. So I get the point that it's a little bit inflated, but what matters to me most is how these coaches perform when it matters the most, and they fail every time. And the reason I said the tackling's coaching, Mike, is because if your players that are grown men that are all pros aren't tackling correctly, it's your responsibility as a coach is to like punch them in the head and say you're playing like crap. You're going to be on the bench until you learn how to tackle. That's what I mean. Like it's a coach's responsibility. 100%. You should be able to tackle by the time you get to the NFL. But a coach just can't accept it and be like, oh, Matt Milano's an all-pro. He can miss tackles. Tremaine Edmonds, like, I don't care anymore. The way Tremaine Edmonds plays linebacker, I don't like that. I don't want that on my team because that's not how you play. I don't want him to
save that, Shawn. Save that for the GM piece, buddy. Save that.
All right, go ahead.
Save that.
I think, quite honestly, too, it just felt like that Chiefs game in the regular season was basically our Super Bowl, if that makes sense at all. Yeah. It just felt like that game, we put so much, I guess, time and energy and thought into consuming this Bills-Chiefs matchup. And I feel like at that point, when we won that game, the Bills were on cloud 9, and they were humbled. They were absolutely humbled after that because every other game to follow, I mean, there weren't many games you could say we were dominating teams. I mean, maybe the New England game and the first game we played them. But after, I mean, really, think about it, guys. I mean, a lot of one-score games, a lot of close games. We lost the Vikings game. I mean, they're just, again, just the lack of consistency there. I think that Chiefs game was basically our Super Bowl this year, and that's exactly when we peaked after that win. So, yeah, absolutely. It sucks, and it hurts to look back and kind of be real about it and be honest about it. But I think that was really the case. But Brett, I did have another question for you too. I know you talked about, the defense and kind of building that up and whatnot. I think it's 75% on coaching, and the thing with coaching, kind of going with what Shawn says, like it's 75% coaching where they should be able to take you there and put you in the position to make the right plays, to execute the right way. And that's definitely a scheme thing. Obviously with the missed tackles, like, yeah, you have to finish that play. But then also as a coach, you need to know when your guy is not performing up to par. You got to be able to light a fire under your team when they don't have any flame at all. I think there is a lot to be said about that, and the good coaches are able to do that. And it just didn't happen. And I think that really is what stuck with me. It wasn't necessarily the players. Obviously, the players have to perform, but the coaches got to get them 75% of the way there, in my opinion. They just failed to do that. So that was the most concerning thing for me. And, I see these positional coaches. Chad Hall is getting interviewed with the Ravens for the OC job. Ryan Wendell getting interviewed with the Patriots for the O-line coach job. I don't think anything's going to happen in terms of coordinators. If it would have, boiled down to it, if those guys were going to actually get a head coaching job or go elsewhere, it would have already happened by now. So I think it's going to be the same coaching staff for the most part as far as the main staples go. So we're going to ride with these guys next year. And how do you get better as a coaching staff? I think that's a question that you have to ask.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough question to ask. I know Buffalo fired their safeties coach and Jim Salgado.
Scapegoat job, for sure.
That's going to solve everything, man. I'm looking forward to that. No.
I'm bummed about it because what was he running off of his third safety?
It was the most depleted secondary I've seen in years. I mean, you talk every single week we had a key piece of the secondary missing, it felt like. So what he had to work with, I think he did an awesome job. I think if anything, he should be praised for the job.
Yeah, I felt like he should have been promoted
when the Super Bowl was fired, and then
I just and that's frustrating when you see stuff like that. It's like, of course, everyone's calling for Leslie Frazier's head, but then you go ahead and fire the safeties coach, and nothing else is done after that. It's like, was that really our biggest issue, or was it the actual coordinator or the coach, the head coach himself? I don't know.
Yeah,
Brett, wasn't it his first year as safeties coach as well? Didn't he get just promoted to safeties coach, and then
it was.
Yep.
Yeah, he was just promoted over. I think it was, is Bob Badich that was the coach there.
Bobby Babich,
Bobby Babich.
You had Hyde go out week 2. You had Poyer miss 7 games, and one of your players die in the field, and then you're like, you didn't do a good enough job. You're fired. It's like,
and you had Cam Lewis, who was playing his first ever game
converted
at
safety. Yeah.
So how is that fair? You had Jaquan Johnson, who hasn't been on the field very much. You have Siren Neal, who's, has a lot of inexperience and is mostly a special teams player. I felt like you said, Jake, it was a scapegoat. But I wanted to bring a really good question for you guys. How much do you think, and I've noticed this over the whole entire season for the Bills, it seems like when the Bills are up in the game, it seems like the defense starts to just take a step back, and they're like, okay, we got this. Yeah, we're good. We got it. We'll let you go down the field, score, and then we got Josh Allen. We'll keep the ball. We'll run the ball. We'll keep it a one-score game, and that's how we'll do it. But how much of that do you think played into the Bills losing this game against the Cincinnati Bengals? Because I felt like they just said, we got this game. Don't worry about it from the start. And then there wasn't an answer. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, the offense just couldn't get into a rhythm. I think they were relying on the offense to score 30-plus points because they were playing bend, don't break, and they just stayed in the bend, don't break defense the entire game. So I think that 100% was a factor in it. Absolutely, Brett.
Yeah, I completely felt like the defense was just relying on what the offense was going to do. I think they felt like, hey, we give him a touchdown, Josh will go down and score a touchdown. We don't give him a touchdown, Josh will probably go down there and give him a touchdown. But one thing I didn't mention before when we started talking about the Cincinnati Bengals game was I didn't really talk about the offense, and I wanted to bring this up. To me, it seemed like Josh never found an answer for what type of coverage that he needed from his blocking schemes. And the Bengals were running totally different schemes where they had Mike Hilton blitzing. There was different schemes where they brought somebody in at different times, and Josh couldn't figure it out. And I don't know if necessarily that's on Josh, or is that on the passing game coordinator, or is that on the Mitch Morris not seeing it? Who is it's on? I'm not like I said, an NFL player. This is just speculation. But to me, it just seemed like there wasn't anything that was seen from the Bills. And it seemed like Josh was just afraid to make that mistake. There's times where I saw where Josh could hit Diggs deep down the field. He was wide open, and he didn't pull the trigger on those throws. And you know damn well, last year he would have made that throw. His rookie season, he would have made that throw, but he didn't. And there's times where he could have taken stuff over the middle, and he decided to take stuff down the field, and they was into double coverage. And I just felt like in this Cincinnati game, I watched the film that Mike, you provided. The film shows, and if you watch it, guys, watch the all 22, watch the whole entire thing. But what I noticed was Josh was not reading his progressions very well. And that started from the beginning of the season all the way to the end of the season. He wasn't reading the progressions well, and he lost trust in his receivers. And that's what caused Buffalo to not have success on offense. And that's why Buffalo had to go after John Brown and Cole Beasley and Nyheim Hines. We had to get guys so that we could get better. And unfortunately, Nyheim Hines didn't work out this year. Hopefully he works out next year. But there wasn't an answer for the on offense, and there wasn't that spark and that number 2 player that can take some pressure off of Stephon Diggs.
All right, so before you steal all my stuff that I'm going to say, you guys keep going.
Mike,
it's great.
man.
I love it. But exactly, it's a great segue, Brett. I'm going to get into. You guys are all talking heavy on the defense. We only put up 10 points. But before I get into my little points here, and you guys did cross a lot of them off for me already, I do want to say this. This is more towards Jake. The Bills are not a cold weather team, my friend.
Oh, here we go.
Put a dome on that stadium. There is no advantage in the snow these days like there were back in the 90s. Absolutely none. Actually, when you're in the elements, you take away all the stuff that Josh Allen can do. Not that he can do some amazing things, but the guys can't catch the ball. So put a dome on that, first of all.
I don't know, Mike. My answer to that is find guys that can make plays, because you look at what Kansas City just played in some real cold weather too. It was like 15
cold,
degrees and
but there
snowy.
was no snow. There was no snow. There was no rain. It just, we struggled in elements. But anyhow, let me get into this.
The Bengals didn't, though.
Yeah. I know. The Bengals didn't. And exactly, the Bills are not built to be a snow team, Jake. That's all I'm saying.
Fair.
All right. So for me, it kind of felt like at the second half of the Green Bay game is where things kind of went sideways. The Bills were, out of sync on offense for most of the game. Looks like we lost Brett there. He got a little
He's
upset.
going to grab
or something.
a drink, he said.
Okay. Everything felt difficult from that point on for the whole season. No real identity. We had a non-existent short passing game. Non-existent. Screens, not a screen team. Underneath stuff wasn't there. Didn't even try it a lot of the times. I think most of that falls on Dorsey. I know you were talking about that, Brett, a little bit. I think most of that falls on Dorsey. But with that said, first of all, let me say I'm not firing anyone. I'm not firing anybody here. And I'll tell you why. I still think we're close. But with that said, Dorsey's, why would you fire the guy? I mean, if you look at the numbers were up there. And he was a first-year offensive coordinator. I think a lot of us, I'm pretty sure Shawn didn't. He was onto this. But I think a lot of people thought that he'd slide right in. Yeah, he was the quarterback coach. He was, working with Josh on a day-to-day basis. He was learning from Dable. But everyone thought he'd slide in and it'd be seamless. Well, I think that was wishful thinking. Looking back now, right? I think we were all wrong there. It is an adjustment. He wanted to make his changes. He wanted to just go off of Dable's game plan. He had his own things he wanted to throw in there. And it didn't work. It didn't work a lot of times. Do I think he should be fired? Absolutely not. I think he'll make the adjustments. I really think he will. So he'll come back strong. What else did I have here that you guys haven't already said? Leslie Frazier and McDermott are defensive-minded coaches. Again, we already talked about, why you wouldn't fire Frazier, because if McDermott's there, he's going to bring in another coach, and it's still going to run his scheme. I think they can make the adjustments. Again, if you change anything, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, you bring something new in, that's going to take time to adjust. And who's out there? Maybe you guys know some names, but if they're out there and they're available, there's probably a reason why they're available, really. And then McDermott, people calling for his head. Look, this dude is such a great leader, and look what he's done since he's been the head coach. Look at all the sucky years that we had prior to McDermott taking over. He's an amazing leader, and he's done a fantastic job with his team. I mean, just look at our records. So for those saying fire everybody, slow your roll just a little bit. As far as versus the Bengals, let's see what you guys didn't mention. Of course, the Bengals schemed well to beat his zone. It's hard to get any pressure when you're throwing a ball in less than 2.5 seconds, which Burrow was. And again, you guys talked about it. The press could have made that a little bit different, more difficult press coverage. Let's see. Poor tackling. You stole that from me, Brett. Absolutely. That was the theme all year. And that's why I was asking you guys earlier, what was the tackling efficiency for the Bills? And it was, according to Shawn, I could never find the actual data to support what I'm going to say here, but I trust my guy Shawn.
I just didn't know where it was anymore.
Yeah, we were near the bottom as far as tackling goes. Let's see.
Mike, I'm going to steal this from me for just a second.
Yeah.
So I saw an article, I believe it was from Buffalo Rumblings, where they were talking about the missed tackles throughout the whole entire season. And they went back from the Bears game. And before the Bears game, the Bills had 138 missed tackles already during the season. So I imagine that number was probably right around 160, 170 throughout the season. That's way too high from a team that's a playoff caliber team.
That's 10 per game, Brett.
Yeah, that's 10 per game.
Wow.
It's awful. I mean,
probably more than that. Probably more than 160.
Yeah.
But think about this, though, on the other hand. Okay. We played, Justin Fields. We played guys that, there's some difficult runners that we played as well, like Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook and stuff like that. So it's kind of understandable where these missed tackles happen, too.
Well, a lot of them happen in recent games. A lot of them, especially in that Bengal game. Oh, my God. How crazy were you going every time they were able to, run the ball for an extra 3-4 yards because a guy couldn't make a tackle or he was just getting bullied down the field. It was crazy. So to finish it off,
proud of me. After the first drive, I was like, it's over. So my friend's like, dude, it's fine. We're going to be good. I'm like, honestly, I accepted it. We're not going to win. So sorry, you guys would be proud of me of how I handled myself at my house that day. You'd probably be surprised too, but
my last take again is, look, we put up 10 points, guys. 10 points is inexcusable in a playoff game, especially with a roster like this. You want to help your defense? Put up points. Don't go 3 and out the first 2 series. Don't put their defense back on the field, and then you'll help them out. So again, some of this, a lot of folks focusing on the 27 points. 27 points against a Bengal offense like that, not so bad. But if you're putting up points on your own, you're going to help your defense. And I think some of this we have to be talking about the offensive side. And that's why it's going to be fun when we get into the GM segment of the show. Because we're going to talk about, we might have differences of opinions on what we're going to target for this upcoming season. That's my take, guys. Anybody have any final thoughts they want to say before we move on with the general manager segment?
Yeah, I have one final thought. This is something for Bills fans and everything I want to say. Hopefully it doesn't get misconstrued. But the biggest thing I noticed in the Cincinnati Bengals game when we were at home was I didn't feel like there was enough energy throughout the stadium. And I don't think that it's necessarily the fans that should have provided that energy. I don't think the Bills provided the energy whatsoever besides the art at the beginning of the game. I didn't think that there was any energy, but I'm pissed off still to this day that you could hear the Bengals on national TV singing their Who Dey chant on national TV in front of our stadium and in our stadium. I think that's inexcusable. I think that should never happen in any situation unless, we're 2-15 and we're not in the playoffs. I understand then, but when you're in a playoff game, there's no excuse for why the Bengals should be louder than the Bills in that stadium because we have the best damn fans in this NFL. And I don't think that there should be a game that goes on where you hear that chant in our stadium. I don't think you should hear any team's chants whatsoever. And I think the only thing that you should hear is the Let's Go Buffalo. That's the only song that you should hear throughout the stadium. But there's no excuse for why Who Dey is playing in your stadium and why they're being louder.
Well, Brett, the only thing I say to that is not only did the Bengals scheme better in this game against us, but so did the fans. The fans schemed, and they knew exactly where those microphones were. So they all bought their tickets close to where the broadcast had those microphones. But you're right. I heard that so much, and I'm like, wow, that is, it's a little surprising to me to hear something like that. So I agree with you, but it could have just been where they happened to be, where they loaded up.
I just got one more thing to say about the game before you go to the GM part. You guys remember it was 17-7. We're close to scoring a touchdown, and McDermott decides to kick a field goal. If you go for it on that point in time and you get a touchdown, it's 17-14. It was near the end of the second half. Because at that point, what's the difference between 24-10 and 24-7? Nothing. You still need touchdowns. So that was a big mistake that could have kept us in the game. And then you're down 10 points with 12 and a half minutes left. It's 3rd and 2, and you throw a 50-yard bomb to a guy that catches the ball 50% of the time. If you score on that drive with 9 minutes left, 8 minutes left, and you're down by 3, you can still win that game as bad as they played. So it's just I don't know. I don't know what Dorsey's obsession was with throwing a deep ball with a crappy offensive line and crappy receivers besides Diggs. And your number 2 receiver dropped the ball more than anybody in the world. So that was a stupid play design. 3rd and 2. You have Cole Beasley on your team. Why you're not throwing to Cole Beasley on 3rd and 2? He might not even been on the field, but there's no need. And Jake, you said it last week when they threw 30 deep balls in the game. Joe Miller mentioned it, like on a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 2, they threw a deep ball. It just doesn't make sense. You might get it. If it went in his hands and he dropped it, he still could have had it, but it doesn't make logical sense on that play. You need 2 yards. You have Josh Allen who could run the ball. You have Cole Beasley. You have Stephon Diggs, who's the best route runner in the NFL, and Dawson Knox, who's a reliable pass catcher, and you decide to throw the ball 50 yards downfield.
It only makes sense if you're going for it on 4th down. That's the only time that it makes sense. But on 3rd and 2 and you're going to punt, makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, it just goes to what I said. There was no short passing game whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
that's
that
on coaching as well.
Falls on Dorsey. Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
And I did mention I didn't expect Dorsey to be like the best coordinator in the world and that he's going to have his growing pains. But the reason I would say like it was a disappointment is because you had all the background that you needed from what Dayball did that worked. You could have used some of that. And you could have like, oh, you know what? McKenzie's fast. We didn't see any jet sweeps. Nyheim Hines is fast. We wasted a 5th-round pick and Zach Moss on him. We didn't use him at all in the offense. Stephon Diggs is the best route runner in the league. We don't use him how he's supposed to be used. We gave Dawson Knox the top 6 money in the NFL for tight end, and we gave him the ball like he was the 30th tight end in the NFL. That's stupid. You try to run the ball with a crappy offensive line. That's really stupid. So he didn't help himself out. He didn't, he put up good stats in the first part of the year, but then the offense was terrible because Josh has to throw the ball deep 40 times. The opportunity of you completing a pass that deep and turning the ball over is the risk to reward isn't that great. So a lot of his picks came from that. A lot of his poor decision making came from that. What happened to Lembert when Josh said, "Oh, I could take over the offense"? Why don't you? He never this. Okay, this is mine, and I'm not listening to you. He shouldn't have to listen to Ken Dorsey. He should be $300 million that we're paying him, or 258, and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He should be able to say, you know what, Ken Dorsey, I know this offense, I know my players. This is what we're gonna do. And you know what? I'm not gonna throw the ball deep 30 times in this game. That pissed me off because I knew if you didn't go for it there that deep and you went for the 3rd and 2 and you were nickel and diming and you made it a 3-point game, we really could have won that game.
Yeah.
Even as bad as it seemed, if you score a touchdown on that drive with 12 and a half minutes left, it is 24 to 17 or 24 to 21. Or no, what was the score at that time? Whatever, we were down by 10. Oh, it was 27 to 17.
Yeah.
It would have been 24 to 27, and then you never know. But I'm ready for the GM section.
All right. So we're halfway through this show, and now it's going to get interesting. It was already interesting. I mean, a lot of good takes from you guys and a lot of good takes from you folks out in the channel. Halfway through the show, hey, if you're new to the channel, all our channels, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channels. We appreciate it. Red, White, and Bills, Go Bills Podcast, Nickel City Mafia. We appreciate your support. So smash that subscribe button. And again, put comments out there. Not only, I mean, obviously you can have the live comments, but after the show goes, put your comments out there. We really appreciate it. So guys, go put on your GM hats now. Channel, put on your GM hats. Where do we go from here? And I said at the start of the show, we're going to have our guy, Shawn Kula, start us off. Mr. Bean, take over, buddy.
All right. Well, I'm going to preface everything with I'm going to give Bean, McDermott, Frazier, and Dorsey one more season. And when I say one more season, I mean the minimum is you have to be in the Super Bowl, and then I'll consider if I want to keep everybody back. But you have to win a Super Bowl. And I say this because we've been ready for 3 years now. And we've progressively gotten worse and worse and worse and farther behind. 2020, AFC Championship. We weren't quite ready. 2021, you choked in the divisional round to the best playoff game ever, right? Then this year, you got embarrassed in the divisional round. And you could have lost in the wild card game. We've been getting progressively worse. And every year, it's the same old excuses. You get Josh on the podium. Yeah, I know it seems bleak right now, but we're in a great spot next year. Oh, that's the same song I heard for the last 30 years of my life, or I'm not even 30, but the last 27 years of my life is, maybe next year. Oh, we'll be great next year. So I give everybody one more year because we're ready now. And yeah, McDermott changed this team around. Bean changed his team around. We're having winning seasons. We're making the playoffs. But it doesn't mean anything if you're not winning the championships. I really don't care about making the playoffs if you're not going to win. Like, it's the same feeling. The drought years, it was still fun, but then you didn't expect anything. Now you expect it all, and you still lose. So it's like it's even worse now. So they need to win. I don't know how much more I can say that. If they don't win a Super Bowl next year, or at least appear in it, that's it. You got to start over. You got to get rid of some people. You got to get some draft picks for the new ownership and the new coaches, and you got to build back up because it's inexcusable how they haven't even appeared in the Super Bowl at this point. But as far as GM goes, I said this before. I'm not going to take credit for thinking of it because I heard it from TD with his team about the Dolphins. We need to focus on one side of the ball, and it's got to be offense because like I mentioned it multiple times in the show tonight. We've had the top 5 defense for years, and it can't win us the game that we need to win. You need to build the offense. We have a terrible, terrible, terrible offensive line. Our best offensive lineman is Deion Dawkins, and he's not even a top 15 tackle anymore. So you have a $300 million quarterback. I'm rounding up. You have a $300 million quarterback, and you protect him with backups. Spencer Brown should never be on the field. Ryan Bates is a ceiling backup. Mitch Morse is serviceable. He's very savvy and smart, but when he plays next to people that aren't good, it shows for him. Roger Saffold was a very big disappointment to me. And then Dawkins was a disappointment to me as well. Brandon Beane, besides the Josh Deere draft, he hasn't really got anybody great. He tries to outsmart everybody else by finding these diamonds in the rough. Oh, that Gabe Davis kid from UCF. Oh, Khalil Shakir from Boise State. all these little tiny people that nobody ever heard of. You think that's going to do anything? And he gets good people, but no game changers. He hasn't drafted one game changer since Trey White, because he was the last pick besides Josh and Edmonds. Josh, Edmonds, Trey White. And like Blake said, you got to reconstruct Josh's contract. You got to reconstruct Dawkins' contract. You got to reconstruct Von Miller's contract, because you need to build the offense. You don't sign Edmonds. You don't sign Poyer. I love them both. I want Poyer here especially, but it doesn't make sense money-wise. Let them go. The defense will – if Leslie Frazier is as great of a coach as everybody says he is, and McDermott's a great coach like everybody says, you don't need Edmonds and Poyer. You should be good enough without them. So let them go. Save $30 million. Go get a great left guard. Go get a great right tackle. Go get a great right guard, or get at least one of them. And then when you get to the draft, focus on your positions of need. Don't go drafting Jake Fromm's in the 5th round. Don't go drafting linebackers in the 3rd round you're never going to use, only for special teams. Don't draft running backs in the 2nd or 3rd round that you don't need anymore. Stop doing these wasteful picks and being stupid with your picks. People like Brandon Beane's a wizard. He's a genius. The only thing he's doing, he's screwing us for the future. You're backloading all these contracts. You're drafting terribly. It's all covered up because of our record and because you drafted Josh. If he never drafted Josh, he would have been gone already. Josh basically saved Josh started Brandon Beane's wizardry, and if he didn't draft, he took a gamble with Josh. If he didn't do that, and we picked Josh Rosen, the Bills would never have made the playoffs yet. We'd still be in the drought. So I like Beane. He's done a lot of great things, but I don't really think he's a genius anymore. I really don't, because tell me one person that's been great, not above average, great, that he's drafted besides Josh and Trey White ever since that year. Tell me one person. I don't even know if we could. Everybody's good. And then he wants to say, oh, we're going to go through the draft and get low-budget free agents. You want low-budget free agents. What did the Bengals do? Lyle Collins, Kappa, Ted Karras, $100 million on the offensive line to win a Super Bowl, to get back to where they wanted to get. That's what you have to do. You can't just, I'm going to get a 14-year vet, Roger Saffold. We're going to be a great offensive line. How'd that turn out? How did that low-budget free agent turn out? How did Van Roten turn out? This is not the league that we're in now. We're getting surpassed by every team, even the teams in our division. The Jets have a great defense. They're a quarterback away from being better than us. The Dolphins are a quarterback away from being better than us. The Patriots, I don't know where they're going to stand, but we're not in a great position. We're really not. So if I'm the GM, I'm letting Edmonds walk. I'm letting Poyer walk, go test the market. If Blake said you could cut Hines and then you get $4.5 million, you got to sign Singletary back if that's what you're going to do. So keep Singletary and Cook, and then you have Duke Johnson on the practice squad. You focus on getting a quick wide receiver from a top school who can separate, because besides Stephon Diggs, nobody can separate. And that's an issue, because in the NFL, you need separation. That's the problem with, like, Brett mentioned the offensive problems, like Josh isn't going through his progressions and stuff. That may be true, but he doesn't have time to go through his progressions like he should, because our offensive line's so bad. And then McKenzie's trash. McKenzie goes 25%. So every 4 games, he's got one good game. That's not good. You can't trust that. I don't trust that. Khalil Shakir could be great, but McDermott doesn't give him a chance. He doesn't give any rookies chances. And I don't blame Beane for that. Beane drafted him because he likes him. And then he's like, you know what? He's got to earn his keep to play on my team as a rookie. He's going to get like maybe 5 snaps a game. That's not how you develop people. If you're on the job training, if you're a plumber, and then your employer's like, yeah, he's a rookie, so I'm going to give him like 3 hours a week instead of 80 hours a week like everybody else. And we'll see how good he gets next year. We'll see how, if he works his butt off in practice, he'll be ready for the second year. Look how that worked with Boogie and Epinesa. You're holding these guys back. You drafted Epinesa at 285 pounds, as a DN, he was dominant in college at Iowa. He was a beast. He was quick even at 285. You made him lose weight. He's now 240, and he gets thrown around like a rag doll. He's fast. He gets thrown around like a rag doll. You drafted Ed Oliver, who was a great pick, but he's undersized, and then you don't use him well in your defensive scheme. If you don't have another dominant player on that defense, Ed gets double teamed, and like I said, he can bust through, but not every time like a Chris Jones or an Aaron Donald. You need a big, like Jordan Phillips. He was great, but he got injured all year, so I think he could have been a great fit. Daquan Jones was good, but you can't just rely on these low-budget free agents, Misfit. Those are just away from being the Texans. Oh, yeah. I mean, basically,
he's talking about Josh Allen. Josh Allen's injured. We already talked about it. I mean, this team is 6-win, 7-win team, maybe.
And that goes to the GM and to the coaches. We didn't build this team properly. Look at the Chiefs did. The Chiefs, as much as everybody hates them, they've been in this AFC Championship for 5 years. Granted, we got the 1 seeds taken away from us, so who knows what happened. That 1 seed seemed to be really good in this year's playoffs, especially because we had a bye in week 6. So that could attribute to maybe they're just tired. I mean, that's an excuse, but that 1 seed was important. But anyway, the Chiefs got rid of their best player, and now they're better than they ever been. They got Juju, MVS, Noah, whatever the heck his name is. These people that aren't top receivers, but because of their offense, they have 3 Pro Bowls on their offensive line. You got Pat Mahomes, and you have Travis Kelce. Every year they've been a Super Bowl contender, and they still have draft picks because they got rid of Tyreek Hill. We have no draft picks, no capital, and we have Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. We have a lot of problems, whether we want to admit it or not. Yeah, 13-3 was nice, but it didn't get us anywhere. It really didn't. And then you look at next year, we have a lot of holes to fill. We don't know what we're going to do with safety. We don't know what we're going to do with linebacker because we don't know who we're going to sign or not. Your defensive line is filled with good people with potential, but you held back Epinesa and Boogie Basham. Luckily, they let Rousseau play his rookie year, but it's so infuriating that Brandon Beane drafts these guys and he's like watching McDermott and these people on the offensive coaching staff. Yeah, we don't need to put this rookie in. Isaiah McKenzie and Jake Kumaro are way better off than Khalil Shakir or Isaiah Hodgins or whoever. That's a great move. You have to develop these players with game reps. So if I'm Brandon Beane, I'm telling the coaches, I drafted this rookie who's supposed to be great. I did my homework on him, and my scouts did homework on him. You got to play this guy because in year 2, what you think he's going to be is not the case because you didn't give him any opportunities in the year 1, and that's what you need. So stop changing people when you draft them. You drafted Epinesa at 285, let him play that weight because now he's trying to learn how to be 240 and push around 330-pound tackles. So leave people how you draft them, develop them, and let them actually play so they can become a great asset to your team. Focus on the offense, protect Josh. You don't even have to get a T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. You have Stephon Diggs. Get a comparable receiver who can separate and catch the damn ball because Gabe Davis has a 50% drop rate. He had 54 catches on 102 targets. And a lot of them, could be overthrows or whatever, but he had the highest drop percentage out of any receiver, and he dropped it in big spots. So Gabe Davis needs to fix – if he can fix that, then that'll be a good hit in the draft. If Gabe Davis can run more than 3 different routes and get open and catch the ball, that'll be really helpful. But it's just a lot of problems. The coaching staff is on the chopping block for me because with all the talent we got, it's getting wasted, and you're wasting Josh's prime years. Josh isn't going to be able to hurdle over people and be a hero forever. So you really had to think about, I got to build this team. We always talked about depth. It turns out we really didn't have any. We really weren't as good as we thought we were. And, it really stinks. And I'm looking at next year already, like NFC East, AFC West, AFC East, 10-7, first round exit is what I'm thinking as of this time right now. It could change signing free agents and drafting. But when I'm thinking about it right now, we might 10-7, maybe win the first game in the playoffs. But everybody else is getting better. They have capital. They have great players. They have people on rookie deals. And then they're taking the most of it. And what are we doing? We're settling. We're settling for low budget free agents. We're not protecting Josh Allen. We have a terrible offensive line every single year. And I know we've only had a channel for almost 2 years now, but I've been saying it for the last 3, just talking. The offensive line is terrible. You cannot win without a great offensive line. So get a good offensive line. And as far as the defensive goes, you have to get one more game wrecker, whether it's a defensive end or a D tackle, because if you have Vaughn and another person who can really wreak havoc, then that would be great. Because if we're going to stay in the soft zone coverage, it doesn't matter if you got Trey White, Jordan Poyer, or Micah Hyde, or Matt Milano back there, because we still get carved up when it matters most. So get another game changer on the defensive line to go with your good players. And then, again, I always said Von Miller is going to play dividends to these young guys like Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, Ed Oliver. It's going to come. But right now, they weren't ready to be, I'm going to take over the game. They weren't ready to do it. And when Von was playing, they were able to get one-on-one looks and then do really well. But it's imperative. Offensive line, maybe another receiver, and definitely another game changer on the D-line. So you can let Edmonds walk and Poyer walk just so you can get another great player on your offensive line.
Shawn, you know what's a problem? I don't know what you did to Miss Finns, but she's coming in hot today, man. She's coming in with the
you know what, Shawn, was it you who said this though? You can win. You can't win with a bad O-line. You don't need the best O-line. You just need a serviceable O-line. I don't know if we would have a serviceable O-line though. That's the thing. That is a very good point.
And Miss Finns, I don't know. You did. I don't think you came in earlier when I mentioned it. The backups that Cincinnati had, a couple of them were first and second round picks from great schools like Clemson. So
yeah, Jackson Carman, he's a stud.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be a starter.
I think Carman was better than the person they had starting originally because he was the worst 100%. One on their line. He gave up like 25 sacks, I think, out of like the 50 Joe Burrow got sacked. But
yeah, he's definitely the future left tackle for sure.
Good one with the bad O-line. Did Burrow win the Super Bowl though? He didn't win the Super Bowl, and he lost the Super Bowl last year too. So yeah, you can get some certain places with it, but you can't win without a great offensive line. The Eagles, look at the Super Bowl. The Eagles had the best offensive line, number one. The Chiefs, 3 Pro Bowlers, like actual like voted All Pro, not like Tyler Huntley and Derek Carr getting put in the Pro Bowl because people declined. These are top 5 offensive lines, and they're in the Super Bowl. So you don't need a great O-line to win, but to win a Super Bowl, how many Super Bowl winners had terrible offensive lines? Look at the Patriots. Every year they were a top 10 O-line. They got 6 rings. I mean, it's all about winning up front, offense and defense. Get another game wrecker and get your offensive line just to the middle of the pack. We're not even in the middle of the pack. If you can give me middle of the pack this year, I'll be like, okay, that's a little bit of an improvement. But Josh can't be running for his life trying to be a hero all the time. And that's the issue. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, Miss Finns. Thought we were gonna miss you tonight.
Yeah, Timmy, you can't see her in the chat. He says, she comes in invisible. She comes in with the bullets flying. I don't know why you're not seeing her in the chat, but that's interesting that you say that. You should be able to. Good stuff, Shawn. Good stuff. Jake, let's go to you next. You're the GM, Mr. Bean. What are you doing here, my friend? Who are you targeting? What are you doing?
Timmy made a really good point. So obviously you'd think about restructuring some of the bigger contracts, but also you have to have the guys buy in and want to do that. Tom Brady did it every year with New England, and obviously they were able to bring in some guys that were absolute dogs because of it. I don't know if these guys are going to necessarily want to do it. I think they would. I would hope that they would. But you talk about some of the top cap hitting guys on the team, just to name a few. That I think they named the top 5 are Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Von Miller, Trey White, and Deion Dawkins. And I think Trey already did restructure his contract, if I'm correct. I'm not sure if that actually happened or not, but so he already restructured. But you look at some of these guys. I mean, Josh is going to make $39.77 million. Steph is going to make $20.27 million. Von Miller is going to make he's going to make $18.62 million. Trey with $16.24. Deion Dawkins with $14.85. If there's some way to restructure one of those guys, obviously that would help. So I think you start there. Then you look at some of your dead cap guys, the guys that are going to, obviously take up a lot of money and a roster space. And my brother brought it up, Nyheim Hines. Like, if you're not going to use him, which we didn't. I mean, he had 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, which were fantastic, and it was huge. You want to talk about giving juice to a team. He's one of the main reasons we won that New England game. But he's also $4.79 million in I guess dead money, if you call it, or $0 dead money, $4.79 million savings if we were to cut him. On top of that, you look at Isaiah McKenzie. He's another guy, $2.62 million in savings if we were to get rid of him, $300,000 in dead money. So those are 2 guys that come to mind, guys that we probably should have utilized more, but you have to make a decision on. And 13 snaps for Nyheim Hines on offense. I mean, and I understand giving up a 5th-round pick. And Shawn, you said it. When we traded for him, it was questionable because you were wondering, I think a lot of people were excited for it because this is a guy that has speed that can be a game changer. And we saw that, as a return specialist, but we did not see it on the offense. And that is a guy that can absolutely help Josh Allen out. We can utilize him in the screen game. We can do a lot of different things, jet sweeps, and there just wasn't enough of that. So what's frustrating is, you're going to pay a guy this much money, but he's not really contributing. And I don't put that on him. I put that on scheming him into the game plan. Another guy, Isaiah McKenzie, I don't think he lived up to the hype, obviously, but I do think he was underutilized still. He wasn't given enough opportunities to make those plays. He did have some drops in crucial situations, but, it's tough. Thank you, Ms. Fins. I appreciate the hell out of that. I'm going to tell my wife that another person said I look like Josh Allen. So thank you very much. I am going to my head's going to explode from that one. But I think those are 2 guys that come to mind when you look at guys that are potential cuts or potential trades for draft picks. Even I think those 2 guys, you absolutely have to make a decision there, and it's logical, and that way you can use, if you do trade them or if you do cut them. You utilize a draft pick, bring a guy in that's going to give you, I guess, a similar, if you can't get a rookie to come in and play 13 snaps or return kicks, like, you're not drafting well at all, period. So in my opinion, I think you get rid of both those guys. And I hate to say that because you did give up a 5th rounder for Nyheim Hines, but exactly as Timmy said, if you don't use them, lose them. So if I'm Brandon Beane, I think you got to consider getting rid of both of those guys. As far as the draft goes, I don't think we're going to do anything in free agency. Maybe we re-sign some of our guys that are unrestricted free agents, guys that are actual need players, such as just position fillers, such as maybe Sam Martin. And it's obviously a lower amount of money. You're not going to pay him a ton of money. Tremaine, it's tough. It's tough, man. Like I would love to have a guy like him back just because there is no middle linebacker that takes away the middle of the field. That's 6'5" that disrupts, I guess, a passing game like he does. But if it's not, if the numbers don't work, they don't work. And I think Roquan Smith sort of tainted the market a little bit. Not, in a great way for him. Go get your money. I love that for him. That's awesome. Well deserved. But shoot, man, I can't. Maybe we franchise tag Tremaine at best. Maybe that's my move if I'm Brandon Beane. As far as Jordan Poyer goes, that is a guy who has put his body on the line every single game, has done so much for this team, and absolutely deserves to be re-signed. But I don't think it's going to happen, and I can't see any scenario where it does happen in real life. It's not going to work out, man. He's in his 30s, and I hate bringing age into it, but it's reality. He was banged up all this year. Towards the end of the year, obviously, you could tell he was playing through some serious injuries, and he just didn't look himself. So, unfortunately, you'll probably let him walk too. So, your best bet for this offseason is to build through the draft, plain and simple. You have to bring in some dogs. I think you have to bring in weapons. I love guys like Zay Flowers who can get open. He's a little bit smaller, 5'10", 182. He's a freaking speed demon, though. He could take you over the top. He could take you in the intermediate routes. He's one of the best route runners in the draft. I'm really sold on him. I like him a lot as a potential first-round pick. Another guy, you go on the other, I mean, I guess you look at other position groups as far as offensive line go, Osiris Torrance. I think he's an absolute stud. He's 6'5", 347 pounds, absolute mauler. That's a guy that I want on my offensive line. And I agree with what Shawn was saying, with having and building a good offensive line, because it is something that is a glaring need. Looking back at that Bengals game, Josh did not have any time to throw the football. And on top of that, but the other issue with that was his guys weren't getting open with the plays that we were calling. I think part of that is on Ken Dorsey. The other part of it is you got to have some trust in your receivers. He didn't have the trust in his receivers, and guys weren't always getting open. They did a really good job in coverage. So that is certainly a glaring need. Receivers, O-line, I think running back is something to maybe talk about, especially if you do get rid of Nyheim Hines. I know Bijan Robinson has been mocked to us too. He's another weapon for Josh. I don't hate it, but I think receiver and O-line are the two biggest needs. And honestly, I'm taking 4 O-line with my 8 picks this year, at least, at the very minimum. I think the middle of the draft is where you can really build on that too. Whether you take a guy in the first round, whether you take a receiver in the first round or an O-line in the first round, that's going to set the tone. I think you take one or the other and you flip-flop it, in first and second round. So that is absolutely something that we're going to have to do. I love Shawn's idea of taking these bigger school guys because they have played in big moments, guys that are used to that. I understand, obviously finding the hidden gem. And don't get me wrong here. I think, when you look at these smaller school guys, guys that might be ready for the NFL, the biggest difference between these SEC schools and like a MAC school is that the SEC has 25 of these pro-ready guys where the MAC school has maybe 5 of them, So the MAC, their starting offense, the SEC has about 3 more of those starting offenses on their team. And that's really what it comes down to. And obviously, there's a difference in competition when you're playing one another. But in terms of talent, you could find guys at any level. But I agree with what Shawn was saying, just because of the bigger stage, having guys that are used to success. You talk about culture, bring in a guy that's won a lot of games in college. I think that's huge. It goes a long way. So love what he was saying there, but absolutely, this is a it's kind of a weird draft this year. It's not super great in terms of a lot of the offensive positional groups, but when you look at it, I think there's some opportunity here to take some good receivers and some O-line, especially in those mid rounds. So got to build through it. I wouldn't mind taking guard, tackle, whatever. You got to do it. It has to be addressed, and this is the only way you're going to be able to get some more added depth and potential starters on this team, because free agency is just not going to be an answer.
I agree there. Brett?
Jake, you said it really well. I really liked what you said. I'm going to kind of feed off of what you said, Jake. You started off with the top 5 players on the Buffalo Bills, and you talked about their salary. If I were to tell you that the top 10 players on the Buffalo Bills accounted for 73% of the total salary cap for the Buffalo Bills, would you believe that?
It's freaking wild, man. It's absolutely wild.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane. I mean, it's over 73%. So, I mean, something's got to give where you, like you said, you got to restructure one of these guys. I think it's going to be probably Stephon Diggs that's going to restructure just a little bit. I know he's kind of ticked off after the last game, but I think Buffalo can maybe save $5 million there, save a little bit with Von Miller and Trey White restructuring a little. I'd like that. But, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and Shawn's not okay with us doing this, but I think you got to release Mitch Morse. I think right now it's more of the injuries.
Sure.
He's on his 6th concussion. This is a draft where it's deep with centers in the draft. There's I can't remember
out of Ohio State. You can get him in the 3rd round. I think that'd be perfect plug and play right there.
Yeah, Luke. What's the last name?
Whippler.
Yeah. So you can get him in the 3rd round. There's the guy from Michigan as well. You can get in the draft. I can never pronounce his last name, but it's like Osulaje or something like that. But you can get him. But there's a lot of guys that you can get in the draft. But 73%, that's way too high for a team that we need to fix some things. There's going to be some bargain free agents. I think the biggest name that I could see Buffalo going after is a wide receiver, and he reminds me so much of Cole Beasley and Scotty Miller from the Bucks.
Love that.
He's available. He's going to be available. The Bucks are over $50 million in cap space. I know that they're going to probably not re-sign so many guys. He reminds me so much of Cole Beasley and what he can do. He's a guy he really hasn't done anything in the last couple of years, and I think he can make a big difference in this offense. So if I'm Buffalo, I'm targeting him. I've been calling his name and saying that we need to go after him. I thought that we should have traded for him this past year. I felt like he would have been the answer compared to Cole Beasley, but we signed Cole Beasley, so I'm okay with that. But there's going to be some bargain free agents that we're going to have to go after. I'd love it. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I'd love to get both Tremaine and Jordan Poyer back somehow if we can finagle the system, because you know that the salary cap is just a number. There's no real salary cap. It's just like the MLB. You can finagle your way around the salary cap. If Bean is really smart and he can manipulate this, we can get Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer back. You're going to have to figure out the terms of the deals. But, I mean, if you sign them to deals that are underpaying them this year and then backload the contracts, I'm completely okay with that. Because I think that there's going to be some players that are going to want them back, and they'll do anything to get them back. So we'll see about that. But in the draft, I mean, you said it best, Jake. You got to go after the guards. Osiris Torrance, he's the guy that I've been mocking mostly in the first round. He's so good. I mean, that zone blocking coverage that he does, he's incredible. He does a really good job in the run game where he's a bully, and he just gets to that second level and just destroys players out there. So that's a guy that I really want on our team. We're going to have to probably look at a safety as well. There's a couple of safeties out there. I can never remember his first name, but Battle from Alabama. He's a guy in the second round that Buffalo could go after as well. Yeah. Third round, I know Shawn wasn't too thrilled with me saying this, but DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, he's a 6'8", 340-pound tackle. He's just a guy that I think can solidify the right tackle position for the Bills for 15, 20 years to come. And potentially, if Buffalo does move on from Deion Dawkins, I think he could slide right over to fill the left tackle position. He's a guy that's got almost a 90-inch wingspan. He's going to be the most than an NFL player ever has. And coming into the draft, he's somebody that Buffalo could look at. But there's a lot of guards and centers and stuff like that in the later rounds. Jarrett Patterson, another guy that Buffalo could go after. Yep, they could go after. A few other ones. I also think that Buffalo is going to need to get a second tight end as well. I just think that the production behind Dawson Knox isn't there, but there's a lot of areas, especially on offense, that I think it's an offensive focused draft. I know that, Mike, you've seen my mock drafts that I'm posing to you guys in the, with the PFF takes. I do in my drafts. I think that the biggest thing is you got to go after the guards, but I also think that you got to think about the future too. You got Micah Hyde, who's playing potentially on his last year of his contract next year as well. His contract is until 2026, but there's 2 years of void years that Buffalo used to restructure his contract. So there's a lot of guys that Buffalo's going to have to move around. And then, you got guys like Timmy said over here where you can move Christian Benford to safety, but I don't
think that absolutely happens, by the way.
I do think it happens too. I think that would be a really good spot for Christian Benford to be in. He's a ball hawk. I really like him. I think that that's where he should have been this year. I mentioned it earlier in the season when Micah Hyde went down. I felt like that's where they should have put him. And I felt like they could have put Xavier Rhodes there as well.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, why wouldn't you just try something? Like we said, try something different. See if it works. Because if it works, you look like a genius. If it doesn't work, you can say, look, these guys don't belong in this position. They're not supposed to be there. And it doesn't happen. But you tried Cam Lewis there, but you won't try Christian Benford or even other guys on the roster there as well, and Xavier Rose. But I would give him a try, see what happens. But I also think that there's positions like linebacker that Buffalo could go after. There's Noah Sewell from Oregon. I really like him. I think the Buffalo could go after him. There's another player, I can't remember his name, from Jackson State. In the later rounds, he's a 6th-round selection that Buffalo could go after as a linebacker as well. And I think that this is a draft where the depth is there.
Yeah, it's Aubrey Miller. Yeah.
Aubrey Miller, yeah. But there's guys that you can go after in the draft. You can find these players, and you can make a big impact on your roster. And, I mean, I can't wait until the first mock draft comes out. I hope that we can do, like, our different mock drafts throughout the weeks and everything and put them on the show and everything and talk about them once a week or something like that. Because I think this is going to change very soon when you got the Senior Bowl coming up. You have all these different bowl games that are coming up for all the different players. And you got the scouting combine. You have other events as well. And I'm looking forward to this time of the year because this is my favorite time of the year because there's going to be guys that you haven't even heard of that are coming out as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And I can't wait to see who the player is. That's somebody like a Tom Brady, who is projected to be a round pick that turns into a 2nd or 1st-round pick. I can't wait to see that this year.
I love it, Brett. I want to put a question out to both of you guys. So we talked about, I think Slinky had mentioned we need a slot receiver, which I 100% agree with him. I think there's a couple guys that can fill that void. I talked about even potentially, cutting Isaiah McKenzie and then having to replace him just because he does take up like $2.79 million.
Right.
Would you guys, just based on the depth that we have at defensive tackle, like I know you talked about Ed Oliver and potentially re-signing him because that's going to be a decision that we had to make. We picked up his 5th-year option. But he's been up and down, man. And Timmy brought up a really good point, too. At the beginning of the show, you talk about guys that were drafted after him in that draft class. Ed Oliver's been good. But Dexter Lawrence, Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Wilkins, they were all in that draft class. I think all of them are better than he is. And I think they've all played at a more consistent level than he has. We have guys like Tim Settle, if we bring back Daquan Jones, Eli Anku, who's hopefully coming back. How would you feel about trading him? He's taken up like $10.5 million on the cap this year. Would you trade? And this was a trade that was floated around. I saw it on Twitter, and I'm like, that actually kind of intriguing to me. Ed Oliver for Hunter Renfrow. I don't know if it's straight up or if you trade him, player for player. Doesn't happen often in the league, but what if you go Ed Oliver and, Ed Oliver for a Hunter Renfrow and a pick or something like that? I mean, would you be open to that? I 100% am on board with it. I know people are kind of up in the air about it, but like, shoot, I mean, this is a guy that it's essentially a younger Cole Beasley. Obviously, you got to utilize him the right way, but how do you guys feel about that?
I'll let Mike start.
Yeah, so I had him as a talking point for me. So first of all, for your question, Renfro doesn't feel like a straight up. I mean, I feel like Renfro. I watched him; he's decent, but I want Khalil Shakir. I want Khalil taking that spot. Okay, I did say though for Oliver, he's going to get $10.7 million. No matter what, you can't cut him or whatever, release him. He's going to be dead cap, same amount, $10.7 million.
Yeah,
but I am up for the trade. If we were able to throw in a draft pick. I am up for the Renfro move if we get an additional draft pick. So I am not a 1-for-1. My note was just basically, he hasn't lived. He's been MIA this year in many important games. And again, you guys are saying he was getting doubled in that game against Cincinnati, but there were prior games that he was missing in action. So for me, I maybe look to trade him, like you said, Jake. Not a 1-for-1 for Renfro. Maybe another person.
Or you just trade him straight up for a pick, because then you kind of
if you can move up on that board, maybe in the first round with him. Yeah, I'm all for it, man. Let's do it. But I'm going to get into my stuff in a little bit. I want to keep the defense somewhat good this year, but it's going to be about building up that offense, like most of you have been talking. I'll throw it to you, Brett, to answer the question, and then I'll get into my stuff and then we'll close this thing out.
I agree. You can take him off the books and everything, But I think that the impact that Ed Oliver has on our team is totally different. I mean, I think that this year he did have a really good year. He was beaten up quite a bit this year where he was double teamed in situations and they pretty much took him out of the game. That's why you haven't heard his name as much this year. I felt like when you did hear his name, it was when Miller was out there on the field. But once Von Miller was taken out of on the Thanksgiving game, you haven't really heard his name nearly as much. But I really think that Buffalo should re-sign him. I think that he is the long-term solution at defensive tackle for the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, I know his numbers, it's $10.5 million that you can save. But if Buffalo is smart, he's on a down year. I can think that you can definitely re-sign him for potentially a low contract. It wouldn't be too much. I think right around $8 million is right where he would be at. So, I mean, if you sign him to a 6-year, $48 million.
One correction, Brett. He is under contract this year for $10.5 million. So it's not like we have to do anything with him right now.
Right.
He is under contract.
Yeah, we could just stay put.
Yeah.
You can stay put, but I mean, that's a big cap number, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you re-sign him for, 6 years, $48 million, that's $8 million a year. You're saving $2.5 million overall, for this year. That's $2.5 million that you can put towards a really good player. You can put it towards Tremaine Edmonds or not Matt Milano, but Jordan Poyer. But I mean, you could also do it where you take money off of the contract at the beginning of the terms. You do it where I've seen it in baseball where you do, $4 million, $6 million, $8 million, $10 million, $12 million in those situations. So that could be a situation where they do that. And if Buffalo is able to save, between, $3 million and $6 million on Oliver's contract this year, I'm completely okay with it because I know long-term he's going to be disruptive and I don't want to lose him because I think he's a generational talent, just like Aaron Donald is. I don't think he's nearly as good as Aaron Donald. Don't get me wrong. But I think that if he goes somewhere, it's going to be just like losing guys like Paul Puslowski and all the other players that we have lost. And I mean, it'll remind me just like London Fletcher, losing him, how big of an impact these players had. I think Buffalo grooms these players and then they let him go too soon. And I don't want to see him go somewhere else, win a Super Bowl ring, and sack Josh Allen. That's mostly why.
That's fair. Yeah, I think it's valid, man. And I will say this: I think the first half of the season, you make a really good point. I was all on the Ed Oliver. I still love Ed. Don't get me wrong. I still love him. I think he's a good player. And I'll say this: I think my thoughts on him have sort of changed when you look at what he did with Von Miller. I mean, shoot, he was playing like a top 5 D tackle in the league. And then there was the Detroit game where he played really well when Von went out, and he really stepped up. And there were a couple games, the Dolphins game, there were, a few games in between too, but it felt like it was every other game. And to pay a guy a lot of money at the defensive tackle position, especially when you have guys that are kind of coming up like Eli Ankou, and you have Daquan Jones, you have Tim Settle, you have guys that are capable. I just feel like you can utilize that money and put it elsewhere to like maybe an offensive weapon or something like that just to help Josh out more. But I do think you make some good points because he's a good ball player, man. We drafted him high. You want to have faith in guys like that, and you want to think that they're going to come out and, hey, contract year basically this year. So this is the year to do it. So a lot of good points.
And I'm going to go with Tim's comment. I do think you can restructure the contract if you re-sign him to a long-term contract. Okay. I mean, it's the only case. That's why I'm saying if you sign him to a long-term contract, you can take some money off of the books this year. So that's why I'm okay with this because I think that he didn't have the best year. You sign him to a long-term contract. That's going to save you money overall. If you get him for right around, $8 million a year, totally worth it. And I mean, I think that the money is going to be there. I don't think it's going to be $8 million whatsoever. I think it's going to be closer to around 13 to 15 million a year. Yeah. But I mean, if you can sign him to a deal, it reminds me so much of like the Tampa Bay Rays. When you have a player that's in arbitration and you can sign him before he becomes a free agent and you do that, you sign him to a long-term deal and you can get him for a very, team friendly deal, that's when I'm okay with it. And I think that this could be a move where it's a team friendly deal. You sign him to a deal that's, going to make him rich, but it's not going to break the bank. And I think if Buffalo's smart, they don't break the bank on Ed Oliver. You sign him to a long-term contract. I believe he's 27 now, 28, right around there. So you sign him to a long-term contract, then potentially you can, 4 years from now, you can let him go. But when he's not the same Ed Oliver as he is right now.
So if you had a pick, so this is a good question, Mike. I'm sorry, we're going way over time. We're at 2 hours right now, so I'll keep this short. Just one last question I have, because I am curious. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. If you had a pick between re-signing Ed Oliver, Tremaine Edmonds, and Jordan Poyer, where do you allocate your money? Do you put it into re-signing Tremaine over that, or do you just say, hey, let's let Tremaine and Jordan walk, and we'll put our money into Ed Oliver? What would you do?
So
that's a question for both of you guys.
You're stealing my content. I've been patient and waiting to talk
I always
about
do.
it.
I always do.
But I'm keeping Tremaine.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit.
So in this case, I would have to say keep Tremaine. I think he's 24. He's the youngest of the group. I'm perfectly okay with keeping Tremaine. But Mike, I'm not okay with franchise tagging him at $20 million a year. That's way too much. I don't think he's worth $20 million. I think he's worth, 14 to 16 million a year. I just can't see paying him, Roquan Smith type of money.
I think you run into an exact situation if you do that. You run into the Roquan Smith situation where down the line in the season, you might end up trading him away.
Yeah.
Just a thing that's going to maybe happen.
I mean, if you had to, ask me being the GM, do I want to re-sign Tremaine and Jordan Poyer versus keeping Ed Oliver? I'm okay with getting rid of Ed Oliver to keep Jordan Poyer and Tremaine Edmonds. But if it's one or the other, I want Ed Oliver on the roster. But if we're going to lose, if we lose just Ed Oliver and we keep Tremaine and Jordan, I'm perfectly okay with it. Because I think you can replace the defensive tackle more than you can replace what Jordan Poyer's presence is on the team. As well as, sorry, I accidentally hit it, but you can't replace Tremaine either.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
All right. Well, let me get into mine. Yes, we will run 2 hours, but it's okay. I kind of expected a long show tonight. We've been off for a week and a half, and we've been kind of digesting everything that happened, and it's been great. So let me get through mine pretty quickly. We'll wrap things up, but I might upset a few people. I hope I don't. But again, I'm the GM. I'm going for it. So again, for me, it's all about helping that offense. Putting up 10 points in a playoff game, there's no excuse. No excuse. So obviously, we're going to draft a guard. I'm looking at the guards that are available in free agents. They're expensive. Anyone that's halfway decent, you're going to be paying a lot of money. But I'm going to draft a guard for sure. I mean, you could re-sign Saffold. Being sarcastic here, he was a Pro Bowler. I'm just joking. Anyhow, I'm drafting a guard 100%. I'm not totally giving up on Spencer Brown. I know a lot of people are down on him. I know that, I think it was Timmy or somebody in the channel saying, being a little sarcastic about Spencer Brown, keeping him, or that we had a gem, something like that. I'm not giving up on him. I'm not giving up on him because, first of all, we got him for 2 more years, $1 million. I mean, he's on a rookie contract. He's very athletic, has the height, has the arm length that you want. And if I'm buying what Jake's been selling as far as Aaron Cromer, why wouldn't I expect him to be able to get better? He wasn't able to work in the offseason last year, had that back injury, was late into camp. And, he struggled a little bit. I don't know if he regressed. I think it was about the same as last year. But give him a full offseason working with Cromer, and I think you'll see a different Spencer Brown this year. So I'm not ready to give up on that. I just think he's got all the physical traits that you want. Now, we did talk about earlier pre-show, bulk him up a little bit. He's 310? I think that's easy to put another 20 pounds on that man. Like, get him eating some of that good buffalo food. Not a problem. Get some additional wings. Take him out. Get some beef on whack. Just load it up. Easy. Put on 20. I'm not ready to give up on him. Center, draft a center to replace Mitch. I don't want to lose Mitch. If Mitch decides to go on his own, then great. Good for Mitch. But if he doesn't, if he wants to play, why do I want to lose the drummer of my band on that offensive line? He's stellar. And like Shawn, I think it was Shawn was saying, he'd be a much higher rated center. He's great as it is. But yeah, the two guards that were next to him definitely struggled this year. So I want Mitch to stay. And if he can, I know we're going to pay him $11.2 million if he stays. And yes, you can save $6 million. But if we're going to change other areas on that offensive line, I want Mitch there. So again, I would draft the center. We do have Bates. Bates can slide over to that center position. Maybe if if Mitch does retire and we draft someone, Bates can slide over until that person's ready. For me also, I want a big offensive player, big physical wide receiver. I know you want a fast guy. I'm okay with that. I'd love a big physical receiver. Now, I did look, and I think somebody already said it in the channel. I don't think the wide receiver draft this year is anything close to what it was last year. Nowhere near it. You'd have to trade up pretty high in the first round to get two of the best guys on the board. You'd have to get up to a top 10 pick or something like that. But I like the guy Zay that you mentioned, Jake, and I'm sure we could get him. Where do you think he would fall? Second, third rounder? Fourth round?
I've seen him going in the late first round. I've seen him going early second round. I've seen him going in the teens in the first round. He's a legitimate player. He is a game changer. I'm telling you right now, Mike. I know you're not a big fan of him just based on his height and weight and stuff, but don't let that deceive you. He runs angry with the football. Kind of reminds me of Antonio Brown a little bit.
Okay.
But I think he's obviously highly regarded. Antonio Brown was a 6th-round pick, whereas I think he is absolutely a first-round talent. And I really, really like him. The more film I've watched on him, the more and more he's winning me over. I think he's an awesome option. I know a lot of people love Jordan Addison too. Is he going to be available there? Do we have to trade up for him? That's probably what we would have to do. So this is where I think, you talk about adding weapons to the team. Maybe you can add both. Maybe you can add a speed guy. Maybe you can add a big physical guy, and you can go back to back. Maybe you trade Ed Oliver and you get a second round or a first round pick or something like that. There's a lot of things that we can do, but I'll let you continue with your points here.
Yeah. So again, I'd prefer a bigger wide receiver, but again, looking at the wide receiver class, again, you'd have to move up quite a bit to get somebody like that. But I'm okay. If he's a playmaker, Jake, we just add in a playmaker. And then hear me out on this one. Get me a big physical running back.
Nice.
Give me a big physical to complement James Cook. Now, listen, I love Devin Singletary. I do. And he won me a nice bet this year against Jake. And I've been a big supporter of his. But the market price is going to be about $5.5 million. And I hate to say this, he's not a game changer. He's really not a game changer. Is he a guy that who was it? Like a Delvin Cook. And again, you're not going to get a Delvin Cook, but I'm saying he's not a game changer. It's not like, my God, the Bills need something special to happen, and all of a sudden Devin Singletary is going to break a 60-yarder for a touchdown. Just not that type of guy. So for me, again, give me a weapon. Could be a running back, could be a receiver. Get Josh more support there. And again, you talked about slot receivers. You get a number 2, Jake. I mean, Gabe Davis would be a hell of a slot receiver.
Yeah.
Hell of a slot receiver.
That's where he operated his first 2 seasons, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you still got your guy Doyle that you were a big fan of. I mean, he was coming off injury. He'll be back. Tommy Doyle, offensive tackle.
Alec Anderson on the practice squad. I like him a lot too, actually.
What about Ike? Ike's out there. He's an unrestricted free agent. I mean, you could probably get him back for a little bit on the cheap there. So, again, you got options. Again, I'm looking for the draft. The free agency is about the offense because 10 points ain't going to cut it. Now, I would like the defense to kind of stay. I mean, they're going to take a dip, and I'm going to talk about that right now as well. So March 7th, 4 p.m. Eastern time is the deadline to apply the franchise tag. Does Edmund get the tag? It's a question, right? And I think people are going to be, no matter what happens with Edmonds, you're going to have 50% of the people upset, 50% of the people happy. If you pay him the franchise tag, like you're saying, $20 million. Going to be a lot of people upset with that. You let him go, going to be a ton of people upset with that as well because he is so young. I mean, and we don't have anyone right now lined up to even come in and take that role, that middle linebacker. And he's been with us so long. He's a guy, Brett, if we were to lose, I could see him doing big things coming back to haunt us.
Yeah.
It's not a guy I want to lose. So right now, Spot Track is saying his market is about 11 million for a year, 44 million. I think they're a little low there.
That's generous, I think.
Right? I think they're a little low. That's what they're saying. Spot Track typically is a little low, but still, I work out a deal with him.
Yeah.
I hate to say this too. I don't bring back Poyer. I'm sorry. Love the guy. Yeah. If he was going to come back, they would have made that deal already. I mean, Jordan, they were saying Poyer and his wife, they've packed up. They're pretty much not expecting to be back in Buffalo, and I believe that deal would have been done. I love him. He's definitely been injury prone lately. I know he played on an injury. Tough guy. I mean, we saw all that he did. He had a great start to the season with all those interceptions. He, drove how many hours to get to a game because he couldn't fly.
Crazy, man. Yeah.
Tough as nails. But $12 million a year is what, and again, that's what he's gonna want.
It's a lot of money.
He's gonna want that. So take that $12 million and re-sign Edmonds. Use it for Edmonds. Is what I'm saying there. Strong safety. You guys talked about it a little bit. I mean, I do think we need to maybe draft someone, in the later rounds, 4th rounder, 5th rounder. We got Hamlin in the 6th round, I believe. But Cam Lewis and Benford definitely got to experiment with that. Definitely got to explore that. Benford, I got to tell you guys, I was actually bummed that we didn't see Benford much. He got off to such a great start. Fantastic. Had a great training camp. Looked good in the season. Got hurt, got dinged up, and we never saw him again, really. Special teams we did. But he's got potential, man. And I could see him going to safety. And my goodness, I thought Cam Lewis did a very serviceable job and actually a good job. Everyone's on him for that Jefferson play where all he had to do was knock that ball down. But Jefferson, let's be realistic. That was an amazing grab.
It's an unreal catch.
And Cam Lewis was almost a starting corner for us at one point. Yeah. So again, I would keep Cam Lewis and experiment with him there, but I would draft the safety in the later rounds for sure. I already talked about Oliver. I had him as a talking point, 10.5 million. You talked about it, Brett. You hate to see him go, and you talked about the double teams, but that's a guy we drafted to get through those double teams. Right. There's an expectation that he's getting through at times and making a play, and I just haven't seen it enough. 10.5 million is a lot. I don't think what we saw on the field is worth 10.5 million. Obviously, you can't cut him because you got him for the contract and he's dead cap at 10.5. So you got to do what we talked about already. If you're not going to keep him, you got to trade him and get an additional pick. I'm down for that. Otherwise, keep him. Let's go. Let's roll. Again, I want to keep the defense as good as possible because, again, build up that offense. Let's put up numbers that can beat any team. Let's never have a 10-point game. Let's never have a 9-point game against Jacksonville like we did a couple years ago. Let's be able to beat the pants off of anybody scoring and have a defense decent enough to make some stops when we need it. I think you said it too. We need a splash player to complement Von Miller. You know who's out there and you could get him for pretty cheap? And damn it, I'm tired of him being a thorn in our side. Melvin Ingram. Bring that man in.
Love it, Mike.
He's a rotational guy. He'll fit perfectly. He's not that guy who can play every down, but he'll come in. Him and Von, let me tell you, Ingram can still get to the quarterback. He played for the Dolphins last year. The year before that, he played for Kansas City in that 13-second game. He played for Pittsburgh in the opening game when we lost to them. Bring Ingram here on the cheap. That's really the, looking at the defensive side of things and the free agent side of it. You'd have to, anyone you want that's going to be a stud, you're going to pay a ton of money. But this is a guy a little bit older, kind of like, is getting up there with Von Miller. But I'm telling you, man, he could bring it when we need it. So that's all I'm really wanting to go for in free agent as far as the defensive side. I think everything else is going to be focused on the offense. And that's my last point. Focus on the offense. And that's kind of it for me, guys.
I love it. I love the points you made were fantastic, Mike. I think you're spot on with all of that. So absolutely. Very thoughtful. I think love the Melvin Ingram idea. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I wanted him last year.
Yeah.
And then the damn Dolphins got him.
Right. I know. It's if he's going to continue to beat you down and beat your team, why not go out and sign him yourself? So that way he can't beat you. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes sense. And I'm sure he would come, I don't think he would be super expensive. He's in his 30s and, he's getting up there in age and he's going to be a rotational guy. He's going to be a pass rush specialist. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
So would you rather lose Shaq Lawson and sign Melvin Ingram?
That's really hard to say. I'm going to say
is Shaq, or do we not have him signed?
Yeah, he's only a 1-year deal. That's tough
Same
because Shaq played extremely well.
Same with Phillips too.
Yeah, Jordan Phillips. That's another name too. I mean, we talk D tackles. I mean, shoot, we have a lot of depth there. We really do. And all those guys I thought played pretty well. I think the most disappointing one, who I thought was going to have a splash year, was Tim Settle. I know he's banged up a lot, but I think he can come back and have a nice rebound season for sure. I'm not even saying he played bad or anything like that. I just thought, as far as potential goes, he is the guy with the most on that tackle group.
So we have Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, and DeJuan Jones under contract.
Yeah. And three of those guys are, 2-3 of those guys are free agents?
Yeah. So
that's,
So you got Jordan Phillips as a free agent and
Daquan Jones, right?
Daquan Jones is not a free agent. He signed
a 2-year deal.
Yeah, it's a 2-year contract.
That's
I think it's like $7.5 million next season. So that's a crazy number too.
You got to keep him, man. I think, honestly, huge difference maker if we have him in that Cincinnati game.
But again, there's another way that Buffalo can, restructure this cap is by re-signing him to a long-term contract.
It's a good point.
So maybe sign him to a 2-year contract, and then you can spread out the money on this contract as well. So, I mean, there's going to be different ways to do it. And Mike, I really liked what you said about the wide receivers too in the draft. You said that there's not a lot of good receivers in this draft. If Buffalo doesn't have a good year this year, I think that there's a really good receiver in the 2024 NFL draft that I really want Buffalo to go after, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm not trying to look ahead to 24 too much, but you saw his father play in the NFL. You know what he's going to bring. This is the guy that I would love to see as the number 2 receiver. I can see the comparisons of Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson. Now you have, 2 guys just like that in Stephon Diggs and Marvin Harrison going down the field. You can, he can run almost any single route that's out there. And then you just find that slot receiver that can dictate the middle of the field, and you got it covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. One point on your Shaq Lawson. So we only paid him $1 million last year. Why wouldn't we just re-sign him? If he's going to be that cheap, let's go. Easy re-sign, right? I don't think we have to lose anybody to re-sign.
He wants to be here too. You can tell. I mean, he was just rejuvenated and absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we can have our cake and eat it too with Ingram and Shaq Lawson.
Love it.
Between the two of them, you're probably dropping about less than $5 million.
6 million. Yeah.
Who would you trade then? Because I mean, that's now you have 6 guys. Well, Von Miller coming back at the end of the season, so you're gonna have 6 good guys at the defensive end position. Who are you gonna trade to keep? Melvin Ingram.
I think AJ Epinesa is a logical
for sure
thought. He had 6.5 sacks this year. I think he would certainly garner interest on the trade market. So he would be probably the most logical choice in my opinion. I think Boogie Basham, I liked what he showed down the stretch a little bit. Yeah. Played pretty decent.
He's still on the rookie contract too, so we're good there.
Yeah, right.
But I have a question. What's your expectation for Von? Like, do you think he, I don't know what they've been saying, but are we going to see him around when we saw Trey White? Is that going to be around Thanksgiving, a full year? Do you think he comes back a little early? I don't think so. I think the Bills, the way they play things, he's a guy that I could see maybe coming back a little earlier than Trey White, because I really believe Trey White prolonging as long as he did was a little bit on Trey White. I don't think he was ready mentally, but Von Miller is a different person there, and I think Von Miller, if he wants to continue to play, that's another problem you have to think about too. I think he comes back maybe a little bit sooner. So if 10 months is when they say it takes to heal an ACL typically. I mean, where's our medical guy, Blake? You out there?
I know. Blake,
where is he? This is where we need you. This is what we're paying him for.
I have experience with an ACL injury. I tore my ACL my sophomore year. It was high school.
Yeah.
I recovered. I rehabbed the hell out of it. I was back really fast. I was probably back too fast. 6 months it took me, and I played receiver. So and listen, these guys are top-notch athletes. These guys aren't high school football players. You know what I mean? But I would say that 8-month window is probably a good estimate. You saw Chris Godwin; he was back pretty early for the Bucs this year. I will say, I think as far as a position where it would take longer, I think corner is probably the position that it would take the longest to come back to, just because your body is moving in so many different ways. But I also thought the same about receiver too. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think that right around the 7 to 8 month window is right where I'm expecting him to be. I mean, that puts him right at the beginning of the season, maybe not playing in the, in train. We're not having training camp, but playing in the preseason, maybe one game, getting a few snaps, but he's going to be on a rotating time frame.
Snap count.
The snap count is going to be very, very low, but I'll tell you right now, if Von Miller didn't have the surgery, I know damn well he would have been out there on the field in the playoffs.
Well, he was saying 2 weeks after it happened, right?
He said 2 weeks. But, imagine this, okay? This is his second ACL surgery, so he already knows how to rehab it. And I think he'll be out there real early. I don't expect it to be a long-term thing where he's going to be out for 3/4 of the season. I expect him out there week 1. I really do. I think he can make an impact. I think that he's going to be poised. I think he's going to be out. He might not be active, but I think he'll be ready. And I think he'll make an impact very early in the season. And you'll see I'm going to say, if it's not the beginning of the season, I think 15 out of the 17 games he'll be out there.
Well, we have our medical expert, Blake, saying, he believes he'll be back for the season. Hopefully, Blake, Josh has got, or not Josh, I call him Josh. I did it, Jake. Hopefully, Jake gets you the contract. We read it over just the other day. We went over it, and I think it's going to be a pretty good offer. So hopefully, he gets that over to you to
snail mail. We faxed it.
And he lives right by you. He just needs to drive over to you. And hopefully, you sign that. We start seeing you on some of, next year when the season kicks off.
Need it.
Bring you on the show for these medical reports.
Yep. Bar bills on Jake.
Bill is on Jake, yes.
Hey, I got something. You guys want to talk conspiracy theories. So just so you guys know, I don't know if you heard, Deion Dawkins went out of his way and ordered like 1,000 wings for the O-line, like a couple on that Friday before the Bengals game. Was Barbill the reason the Bills came out so flat against the Bengals? Because it's a lot of wings. A lot of wings,
Well, wings and alcohol probably was involved.
I'm sure there was something involved there. Yeah,
I'm gonna suggest something. Okay, I wonder if Deion Dawkins only ordered flat wings.
Ooh,
maybe that's why.
Ooh, only flats. You have to pay extra for that too.
Flats are my favorite, by the way. I love flats.
I don't discriminate. I like both. I understand the positives, the pros and cons for both sides, but I get where you're coming from. I mean, the flats obviously. In terms of ease of eating, I would say they're a little bit easier, and you get more. Drumstick, though, you just rip it right off.
So I took my mom out for wings last weekend, and we have a place in her area called Buffalo Wild Wings, right? Buffalo Wild Wings. I was going to record the whole thing.
Good Lord.
We get in there. Takes us about an hour to get a seat. I get there. It takes us another 45 minutes to get our food. The wings come, they're okay. I rated them a 3 out of a 5. Most of them were good. The sauce was pretty good, but just way overdid the sauce. This is like they poured it on after the fact instead of, I know a lot of Buffalo places, they, mix it up and they give it to you. And it's almost as if they just dumped the sauce on the top of it. But I do know Barbill paints paints the the sauce on there. Anyhow, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Some of the chicken, the skin, just if the skin isn't that perfect, little bit crispy there, I don't want it undercooked. I can't stand a rubbery. It wasn't rubbery. It wasn't that bad, but man, I needed a little crisp. And so I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. My mom gave it
That's
a 5.
generous.
It is generous. And especially since the service. So I'm not factoring in the service. I actually did bump it down to a 3. I told them because of the service. But my mom's like a 5. I'm like, really, Mom? She actually ate a lot more wings than I expected. But she hadn't had wings in so long, and that's probably why. Because
she's a Buffalonian too, Mike?
Oh my gosh, she's been in Buffalo longer than I have. So
I don't know.
No, she's a little older. She can't take the spice anymore, but she enjoyed it. And then my son Jonah actually thought they were pretty good too. But I was like, nah, I graded them down a little bit.
The only sin that Josh Allen has made towards me is signing that deal. And listen, you go get your money. But, man, I was a little upset when I saw he was a spokesman for Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm like, dude, he knows what good wings are, too, because he loves barbell. He talks about it all the time. But, hey, go make your money, whatever. But I was a little...
just about to say that. I'm like, how can Josh Allen, be the spokesperson for Buffalo Wild Wings when Buffalo Wild Wings, I don't think they started in Buffalo.
They have actually all gone out of business here.
Yeah,
there might be one that's still open. Yeah,
that says a lot. Then
they can't stay in business here because every other, any mom and pop shop has better wings than Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah.
Did you hear about this? This is totally different from the wings, but I heard that Papa John's was like coming up to Buffalo and trying to start their franchise up there.
Oh, really?
I don't think it's going to work. I heard
they're
Papa
not going to have a chance.
No.
Yeah, there's
all
no
those
way.
chain Pizza Hut's not even here. We lost Pizza Hut. I think they are trying to come back, but Pizza Hut's irrelevant.
Dude, Pizza Hut when I was a kid was fantastic. I used to love to go to the brick and mortar. They have the deep dish. Then they changed the recipe over the years, and they went downhill. But my God, I can remember the days going with my grandparents. It was right there, and not quite. I don't think it was Abbott Road, but that little brick and mortar place. Deep dish pizza was amazing. Love that place. Now, I can't stand it. You'll never see me ordering from them. They just change things.
So down here, we have a Pizza Hut, and it's still the Pizza Hut buffet style. So you can sit down and they have the menu still and everything, and you can order off the menu and sit down and eat your meal and everything. I think it's freaking cool. We only have one down here of that, but we have a Hungry Howie's. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but we have Hungry Howie's, and it's a pizza buffet. It is absolutely disgusting. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 2. Wow. And it's awful, but I absolutely hate it. But my buddies think it's so good. So when we get drunk and everything, we go there, and it's our favorite place to go because it's just disgusting food, but it's so cheap. It's like
it's incredible.
I think it's $10 for all you can eat and everything. Totally disgusting.
Why wouldn't you?
But why wouldn't you? Exactly. Yeah. But then we have CC's. We used to have CC's Pizza here.
The cinnamon rolls there were phenomenal.
No, it's not even the cinnamon rolls. It's the fudge brownies. Those are the best, in my opinion. So, but we got rid of that. We can't have that here. And I saw up in, I think it was in Canandaigua, that they had a CC's Pizza. And I'm like, oh, we got to go now. So we went to the CC's Pizza. It was freaking good. And I'm like, I saw on a commercial they had CC's Pizza up there. And I'm like, you guys have CC's Pizza? I'm like, I thought that was just a Southwest thing. And people are going, no, we have them all over the place up here. And I'm like, how?
Interesting.
So if you haven't tried it, CC's Pizza, it's I think it's $4.99.
I've only had it down south.
Aren't they buffet? You go
it's
to
a pizza buffet, but it's $4.99.
We've been there, and actually the kids liked it. It's funny how we always get on the food here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, whenever it's us three, we always end our show talking food. We are gonna do. We've been talking.
We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that show for sure.
We're gonna do a little.
I want to say this.
We got to stay online until midnight, because then we can have our midnight snacks and everything. We're good. We got another 22 minutes. We can just keep talking about pizza and everything. I'm throw one in real quick, and we can start reviewing it.
What went wrong for the Buffalo Bills? Really, what it came down to was they ordered 1,000 barbell wings before the Bengals game.
Exactly.
There you go. I can save Papa John's a lot of money. If you're listening, Papa John's, do not go near Buffalo. Your pizza's not even close. We have a lot of Papa John's out here. I had it years ago. Just not a fan of it. You know what's my favorite place? We have some Indian reservations around where I live. And as I drive home, I take a shortcut and I go through one of the reservations. And one of the guys has this little, I don't want to say it's a little cart. It's not a cart, but I don't know how to explain it. It's a smaller version of a caboose, right, of a train. And he does pizza out of that. Best pizza around. I have to go to some guy that's got this little shop, and I go, and he tells me the story about how people have tried to buy him out and get his sauce. Because like I always say, people ask me, well, what's pizza? It's just, sauce and crust. It's about that sauce. That sauce is what makes Buffalo pizza special, and the way they cook the crust. So anyhow, we can keep going for food all day, but I got to go eat because it's actually early here and I haven't eaten. So I got to get out of here and get my son some food as well. Let me closing thoughts for you. Yep.
I want to bring up one more thing. I've seen this all over in the tailgates and everything, but I really want to reach out to Pizza Pete and go up for a game and meet him and have his pizza, because I've heard it's freaking good. And, I'm going to try as hard as I can to get a game this year. But Pizza Pete, if you're watching, send me a DM because I want to go and have your pizza. I've heard it's amazing, and I can't wait to have it.
We'll do it. We'll make it happen, Brett.
So that's a guy he sets up shop there at the tailgates. And
he has
makes pizza.
He makes his own dough. He makes his own. I think it's his own sauce or like his buddy's sauce now.
He makes it out of a filing cabinet.
Yeah, it's like a filing cabinet.
Insane.
Yeah. Have you
had it?
Barstool thing where they?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's incredible. I've seen him in person do it. I walked by and I saw him doing it. It was pretty cool.
Oh, I gotta find him, but I want to try it so badly. It's like looks like the best pizza. So, down here, I'm in Sarasota, Florida. We don't have good pizza down here. I'll tell you that right now. We used to have Pontillas. That was good, but we don't have anything nearly as good as Buffalo pizza. And I can't wait to get up there this summer and have some good pizza. So,
yep, looking forward to it. I'll be up there, so we'll all get together. So that's it. 2.5 hours. I knew it would be long. Wow. Good talking to everybody. We'll be back in the near future. So this kind of sets the stage. Free agency's up next, and we're actually not that far away. It opens March 13th is when free agency, where teams are allowed to talk to people. So we're going to be coming at you with some shows, free agency targets. We'll get deeper into some of the guys we mentioned, but some other guys as well. And then right behind that is the draft. And oh boy, we already said on this show, we're going to invest heavily in the draft and certain areas. So we'll be bringing you all that good information. So looking forward to it. And we plan to do a show every week going forward up until that season starts. And then we'll do our normal 2 shows a week. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, everyone out in the channel. A lot of fun. Have a great night. We'll talk soon. And go Bills, man. Go Bills. I'm going to leave you. I got to get my money's worth. We got to play it. We're going to play this a lot next year because we're going back to the playoffs. But let's end it here. Here we go.
Bills Mafia. Circling the wagon. You feel me? Nickel City Mafia. Let's go. Josh Allen, quarterback supreme, leading the Bills to the top of the league. Weapons by his side, and that defense hella mean. Buffalo's got a team that must be seen. I said Buffalo's got a team that must be seen. Yes, come on. J17 leading the charge. Buffalo Bills on the rise. Passing game on point, ain't no mirage. Happening right in your eyes, ain't no surprise. Buffalo stacking the QB. Stephon Diggs something in the past. Group cars didn't have to go deep. We're circling wagon, just wait and see. From Wyoming to the NFL, Josh Allen's got the skills. Air raid, deep ball, touchdowns for real. Leading the Bills to playoff drills. Real time, this ain't no drill. Cold game, we're giving them chills. Check the score, now you know the deal. Nickel City Mafia.